Let us pray. Almighty God, we give you thanks for giving us a new day. Guide the members of this honorable chamber, as well as those who support their important work. Assist us all this day to may listen as you speak through the events of this day. So what we know not, teach us. What we have not, give us. What we are not, make us. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
And so that we can observe a minute's silence in recognition of the outstanding work and the life of the late Sir Henry Ford, Member of Parliament for Christchurch West. May his soul and that of the departed rest in peace. Good morning, honorable members and our guests. This chamber is now in session. The minutes of Tuesday, October the 8th, be deferred. Honorable member?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
The question is that these minutes of October 8th be deferred. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Announcements by Your Honour, the Deputy Speaker. Messages from Her Excellency the President. Petitions, papers.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm commanded to lay the report on the St. George North by-election 2020.
Government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills.
I beg to move the first reading of the Business Barbados Bill 2024.
The question is that this bill be read the first time. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Beg second that.
Question is that the standing orders so mentioned be suspended for today. Honourable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Government business, no?
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 11. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Tourism and International Transport, to move the second reading of the Merchant Shipping Bill 2024.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With your permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to request that orders 11 through 15 on the order paper, because they're so closely linked, be considered and treated as a cognate debate.
The question is that orders number 11 to 15 on the order paper be accepted as a cognate debate. Honourable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. And those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. Honourable member.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise this morning to continue the outstanding work done by the former minister responsible for the blue economy, who would have commenced the pathway for Barbados to be at this stage where we're hurling into this through this Parliament, a number of new pieces of legislation intending to modernize the maritime sector. And I also want to thank all those who would have worked within that ministry of the blue economy for their outstanding contributions in allowing us to reach this point here this morning. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are here this morning to discuss and debate the merchant shipping suite of laws comprising 5 bills that you so graciously allow us, Madam Deputy Speaker, to co-join in this debate as a cognate debate. Each bill relates to merchant shipping activities, and the suite of laws addresses the major legislative-related deficiencies identified in the 2018 audit of Barbados by the International Maritime Organization. I would have made this point before when we piloted other bills in this honorable chamber. And as we continue to debate lay bills, but also debate them in here, it is important to understand where we've come from in order to appreciate the volume of work necessary as we advance the maritime sector. The imminent follow-up of the audit, obviously, which is intended to occur later this year, gives us an opportunity for the IMO now to look back post-2018 to see what a remarkable path and a remarkable progress that this Barbados Labour Party administration has taken in order to modernize its maritime laws. Today, in the suite of the merchant suite of the laws, we are going to be looking at the merchant shipping bill, which is approximately, I believe, contains 1,041, I believe, pages. The merchant shipping liability and compensation bill, the merchant shipping maritime marriage bill, the merchant shipping liner conferences bill, and the merchant shipping multimodal transport bill. All these bills, Madam Deputy Speaker, refer to the various activities undertaken by merchant ships, be it the transportation of goods, of people, or the facilitation of other offshore development activities, those activities undertaken by special purpose merchant ships to support other maritime sectors. The legal landscape for the merchant shipping sector is complex. It is indeed intricate and dynamic. And the system of regulations deriving from the customary maritime laws, the general principles that are codified into the laws of the sea as detailed in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, 1992, and codified in international shipping laws. As we all know, shipping is the cornerstone of global trade. It is, I'm advised, responsible for more than 90% of the world's trade in goods, and also the national socio-economic development of a country. Shipping is a key revenue earner, not only for Barbados, but also people who work within the sector. And then within that sector, as diverse as it is, there are a number of opportunities which I shall disclose during this debate that will further enhance Barbados's earning reputation as a place not only to do business, but as a place to generate even more revenue. And I say that, Madam Deputy Speaker, because when in 2018, the maritime audit was conducted, it had to assess the extent to which Barbados complied with its obligations under the various IMO instruments concerning safety, security, and the protection of the marine environment. But it also did, what it also did was that it also would have caused us to implement various IMO instruments in relation to the flag state and vessels who carry port state control and others with coastal state control. But what must be told is that prior to 2018, we were not compliant with a number of IMO regulations, or legislation was outdated. And what we have done since 2018 was to ensure that not only we had the audit, but that we complied with the recommendations as part of the assessment detailed by the IMO in its audit. And we are here today because of the overarching legislative specific findings pertaining to the maritime safety and security and marine pollution. And we have to do this because if we want to be serious about the maritime sector, we can't do as was done by the previous administration and allow the modernization of IMO and certainly the maritime sector to go with a failing grade. What we have done is that we are correcting all the deficiencies that are necessary for us to advance the maritime sector. And you will recall that the various pieces of maritime legislation developed then under the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy was indeed a response to correct the numerous legislative deficiencies, as I said, and also the recognition of the duty of the government of Barbados as a signatory to the IMO to ensure that we comply with all of the IMO instruments, but at the same time advance our laws to regulate the maritime sector. Of course, in order to do so, there had to be a policy. And there was a national policy on international shipping, which is both compliant and developmental in its trajectory. Of course, at the time when we did so, we recognized coming out of that there were a number of pieces of legislation that we had to bring to this Honourable Chamber. Madam Deputy Speaker, you will recall that I came to this Honourable Chamber, and I believe it was in February, and we debated the facilitation of International Maritime Traffic Act. That was enacted through the official gazette on February 12th of this year. And that piece of legislation implicitly set out to ensure that we complied with the Convention on the Facilitation of International Maritime Traffic. The act was also designed to support the development of a port community system in Barbados to further enhance the efficiency of the ship-port interface. We didn't stop there, Madam Deputy Speaker. We also brought to this Honourable Chamber the Shipping Domestic Vessels Act. It was enacted by publication in the official gazette on the 26th of July of this year to ensure compliance by small vessels with the minimum safety, security, and marine environmental protection standards of the IMO, while promoting development of the small vessel sector and the water sports industry. We went further and we brought to this chamber the Marine Transport Emissions Control Suite. And we did that in July. I believe it was July 9th of this year. And that piece of legislation sought to ensure compliance by large merchant vessels through domesticating Annex 6 of the International Convention for the Prevention of the Pollution from Ships, what they call the MARPOL. This legislation, of course, was to ensure that the enabling framework for the Barbados' development of the green sector was secured. We also decided that we had to take an additional step. And we are here this morning because with the merchant shipping suite of laws comprising 5 bills, 22 regulations, to seek to ensure compliance by large merchant vessels with stringent maritime safety, security, and marine pollution prevention requirements imposed on vessels exceeded 150 gross tons. The entire suite of the merchant legislation covers both the wet and dry aspects of shipping. Of course, wet shipping refers to activities occurring during the voyage, while dry shipping refers to those matters that are maritime in nature, of course, but occurring on land. And the 5 bills constituting the suite, as I've explained, the Merchant Shipping Bill, the Merchant Shipping Liability and Compensation Bill, the Merchant Shipping Marine Marriage Bill, the Merchant Shipping Liner Conferences, and the Merchant Shipping Multimodal Transport Bill. These 5 bills, Madam Deputy Speaker, though largely developed under the then Maritime Affairs Ministry, were advanced and submitted to the Cabinet by the Ministry of Environment and National Beautification, the Green and Blue Economy. It was when the Shipping Division, now the Barbados Maritime Transport Administration, was part of the bill, and therefore it was eventually transferred to the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. The Merchant Shipping Bill is supported by 20 regulations which serve to operationalize the maritime safety and security aspects of the bill in respect of the aspects relating to flag, port, and state controls. The Merchant Shipping Liability and Compensation Bill is supported by 2 regulations which serve to operationalize the liability and the compensation regime in respect of ships under the said Merchant Shipping Liability and Compensation Bill. But the key features, Madam Deputy Speaker, of the Merchant Shipping Bill, it must be noted that it composed of some 34 parts, 1,488 provisions, and 14 schedules. It is a key piece of legislation in this merchant shipping legislation series. It contains a majority of the corrections of the legislative related deficiencies identified in the 2018 audit by the IMO. And I'll briefly go through, not briefly I should say, I'll go through the bill. The bill, as I indicated, is voluminous in nature, over 1,000 pages. But it is important that we seek to understand what we are doing and why the government is committed to bringing this piece of legislation to this Parliament. In Part 1 of the bill, clauses 1 to 22, it deals with the preliminary matters, including vessels to which the legislation applies, namely vessels above 150 gross tons, and that's important because we also have the small vessels, the small vessels bill. Well, it also defines the terms used in the bill in the preliminary section. And as with previous maritime legislation brought before this Honourable House, there is an ambulatory reference clause in relation to the international maritime instruments incorporated within the legislation. As you well know, the IMO, as part of its mandate, will routinely update and modernize regulations and other conventions. And therefore, it is necessary for us to ensure that we have the ambulatory reference so that we could codify those changes when they happen into the laws of Barbados. And the bill certainly is very proactive in that respect so that we don't have to come to this chamber every day of the week to effect critical changes. The objectives of the bill as incorporated at Clause 2, and I shall read them because they are very important. To create an enabling environment for development of an economically viable, ecologically sustainable, and innovative merchant shipping sector for Barbados. We certainly want to bolster the marine commerce and seaborne trading activities. We want to enhance efficiency, safety and security, and environmental performance in shipping. And we need to give effect to a number of international maritime conventions, including the International Convention on Maritime Liens and Mortgages 1993, the International Convention on Tonnage Measurement of Ships 1969, the International Convention on Load Lines 1969, of 1998 relating to that convention, the Convention on International Regulations Preventing Collision at Sea 1972, the International Convention for the Safety of Life 1974, and the 1988 protocol relating to that convention, the International Maritime Convention on Maritime Search and Rescue 1979, the Convention on the International Maritime Satellite Organization 1976, the International Convention for Safe Containers 1972, the International Convention for the Prevention of Marine Pollution from Ships 1973, as modified by the Protocol of 1978 and by the Protocol of 1997. The Convention on Prevention of Marine Pollution by dumping of waste and other matter, the International Convention on the Control of Harmful Anti-Fouling Systems on Ships, the International Convention for the Control of Management of the Ships, sediments and ballast water and everything else that is needed in that regime, the International Convention relating to intervention at high seas in the case of oil pollution, and we talk about a bit later, the International Convention of Oil Pollution, Preparedness and Response and Cooperation, and Hazardous Instruments, in Nairobi Convention. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm not going to list all of them, but I felt it was necessary to list some of those conventions so that we understand the magnitude of why the bill has over 1,000 pages, because we were so deficient in the past, not this administration, of course, that we found it necessary to ensure that we incorporated all of the conventions relating to the IMO. Part 3, clauses 41 to 72 of the bill outlines the maritime and merchant finance framework. It is critical to have such provisions in the bill considering the capital intensiveness of the shipping sector. The bill provides an enabling framework for the creation of public and private maritime and merchant banks. And major shipping nations like Greece, Malta, and United Kingdom, for example, they have recognized the importance of ship finance and have gone to the extent of providing specialized maritime financial institutions that understand the nature of shipping and thus tailor their financial services to meet the financial needs of the shipping industry. And it's for this reason that the ministry and all the officers recognize that this was an important consideration. This is an opportunity for the shipping industry, not only because of its very nature, but because it creates a number of opportunities for the government of Barbados to get involved in the financial aspects of shipping by way of considering and encouraging persons with capital who are in this business to consider Barbados as a sovereign location where they can effectively have a financing and capital requirements located here in Barbados to further build out our financial services sector. And it is important, it is essential, because corporate financial management within shipping companies would give the opportunity to Barbados if they believe that we have the requisite legislation at hand. So this piece of legislation effectively creates inroads into the very lucrative and ever-evolving ship finance area. Existing financial institutions, of course, can benefit from adding maritime financial services to their portfolio. And of course, we will do whatever we have to do to encourage them, obviously, to come to Barbados and, if necessary, set up in Barbados to execute ship finance, because the modernization of the legislation will now allow these financial entities and others dealing with the capital markets to consider Barbados as a location for them to engage in business. Clauses 73 to 81 of the bill outlines a framework to support marine commerce and trade within the purview of the National Maritime Transport Policy, as I referred to it earlier. The IMO classifies a national transport policy as a statement of principles and objectives to guide decisions in the maritime sector, and the existing national policy on international shipping, upon which all of the shipping legislation for Barbados is premised, is an alignment, is certainly a national maritime transport policy priority, and the existing policy envisaged in the alignment with international maritime standards and maritime legal landscape, which is currently being built out. The promotion of public and private partnerships in shipping, those are located at clauses 82 to 85 of the bill, which formally recognizes the role of Barbados's private sector shipping organizations to the continued advancement of Barbados's merchant shipping sector. The Barbados Maritime Transport Administration, formerly Shipping Division, within the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport, certainly will advance a number of these initiatives and continue to work with the private sector shipping organizations and other commercial entities to ensure we make considerable progress and to ensure that the contributions to the shipping industry, by virtue of their existence and their continue to trade with the necessary activities as they pursue them within their business. So we are building out that aspect within the shipping, the private-public sector partnership. Now, the ship suppliers and maritime service providers, if we look at clauses 86 through 91 of the bill, it recognizes the importance of ship suppliers and maritime service providers, hence the standards adopted by the International Ship Suppliers Association, incorporated under Part 6 of the bill. At Clause 91, the bill empowers the shipping minister to jointly with the minister responsible for commerce to develop a small business ship supplier scheme to enable the equitable participation of small businesses in the ship supply and maritime service provision. And of course, we will work jointly to ensure that we build out that particular sector. In respect of ship registration, that's clauses, part 7, clauses 92 to 171 of the bill. It details the registration regime for merchant vessels. In the human rights arena, I am advised that they say rights come with responsibilities. In a similar vein, in maritime, it is said that with vessel registration comes the responsibility of the country of the registry to ensure that the vessels registered under its flag comply with maritime safety, security, and marine pollution protections. In order to engage in shipping activities of any kind, ships must be registered in a country. We all know that too well when we look at the Article 91 on the United Nations Convention of Law of the Seas, 1982. It requires ships to have a nationality. And ship registration is also important in the realm of maritime regulations, compliance, and enforcement. From the moment a ship registers, it has obviously to be subjected to a number of maritime laws and those of the state to which it has its flag. The concept of a flag state control, the quality of the maritime legislation in terms of the alignment with international maritime standards and best practices, also in terms of legislation support for the maritime sector, and obviously other activities contributing to the attractiveness of the ship registry. Now, this particular bill, once again, would allow this country to become even more attractive to persons who wish to use Barbados's good name as part of its flag state or as part of its responsibility as a country of registry. And therefore, this legislation will allow us to attract even more ship registry business in Barbados, and thereby increasing, obviously, the revenue generating opportunities from the registration of ships. It is clear to us that once we have, especially open registry states which are under immense scrutiny by IMO, and Barbados is an open registry state, as with the majority of shipping nations within and outside the Caribbean. And an open registry refers to countries having a ship registry system that allows vessel owners to register their vessels in those countries despite not having a genuine link between the country of registry and the vessel. So in other words, there are people who go and they purchase ships using cargo ships as an example. They will determine where they would want the ship to be registered. They will look to see that we are compliant with IMO regulations because they are duty bound to ensure that, especially if the ship was built and financed, that they comply with a lot of the, if not all the IMO considerations and all the regulations as well. They look to see, and by this major step today, once this bill passes this House and in the other place, it will allow Barbados to attract even more revenue from the ship registry. And this is very critical. Not only are we looking for investment, but we want to ensure that at all times, Barbados is compliant with all of the internationally accepted maritime regulations. Now, the merchant shipping suite of laws and the other new pieces of maritime legislation applicable to merchant ships above 150 gross tons will further enhance Barbados's already good reputation on the international shipping scene as a result of the significant changes that we are making in respect of this legislative framework that we are pursuing. Of course, the merchant shipping bill will demonstrate and certainly will be operating as a flag of confidence and not as a flag of convenience. And that is critical to our name and certainly our success in shipping. Of course, as I said earlier, the provision of such services in terms of ship registries, it would allow us as a country to generate even more significant revenue. And therefore, by modernizing our legislation, that puts into full focus opportunities for Barbados to do business as we have done in the international business sector. This now plants us firmly within the maritime sector for Barbados to be a place to do business with and to open up new and greater opportunities. Of course, ferries above 150 gross tons will also be able to register under the new merchant shipping bill, again, creating further inroads for the development of the ferry industry in Barbados and, of course, abroad. And we know that there are ferries that operate all over the world, and there are opportunities for us, for them to be registered under the new merchant shipping bill. Of continuing part 7 of the bill, in addition to providing for ordinary vessel registration, it provides for bareboat charter registration. In a bareboat charter arrangement, the ship owner transfers to the charterer all of the operational and market risks associated with the vessel. Of course, I would have discussed this and I would have dealt with this when we introduced the other pieces of legislation early this year. We spoke to this extensively in terms of the chartering and bareboat charters and the ownership that is required by international law. And because it's a vessel that can be operated only under one flag at any given time, again, it promotes opportunities for Barbados's maritime sector for us to generate even more revenue under that section. Part 7 at clause 93 of the bill indicates that the program, that is the Barbados's International Ship Registry Program for the overall management of shipping, should guide the work of Barbados's International Ships Registry and related activities, and that we should also support the undertaking of actions to continuously give effect to this act and its statutory instrument and serve as a guiding framework for the continuous improvement and development of Barbados's merchant shipping sector. When we continue at clauses 172 to 188 of the bill, it establishes, of course, an overarching international ships registry program. Also, very importantly, a yacht registry sub-program, which is clause 172 section 2, which guides the work of Barbados's yacht registry and yacht registry related activities. Clauses 189 to 194 of the bill establishes a cruise ship registry sub-program within the overarching Barbados International Ships Registry Program. Clause 190 is specific in the sense that it sets out and it tells us that in order to guide the work of Barbados Cruise Ship Registry, the cruise ship registry related activities are therefore embodied within this section. It talks about the ability of the program to create and maintain an enabling environment for the continued advancement of Barbados's cruise industry. It talks about promoting strategies that will attract cruise ships to and to retain cruise ships under the Barbados flag and to support capacity building, training, and employment opportunities in the cruise sector. Now, we all know that there are some countries, and particularly cruise ship companies, I should correct myself, who will oftentimes flag a ship. There are some cruise ships, when we go on them, you will see the name of a country. And you would ask yourself, well, why is it that that cruise line operating, for example, in Miami, would have the name of a Caribbean country on the cruise ship? It is for this reason that they have the right to register. And therefore, with us modernizing our legislation, we stand to benefit from the opportunities afforded to other countries for us to have a cruise ship registry firmly established in Barbados. And that is why I took the time to settle all the conventions why the bill has in excess of 1,000 pages, because these matters are critical. And were they dealt with before, Barbados perhaps would have had a number of cruise ships registered under its name, plying the ocean. But of course, this legislation will give us the important steps. It also, as I indicated, makes and provides an opportunity for yachts as well to be registered here. You will know, Madam Deputy Speaker, that when we sometimes go on YouTube or we are traveling and we have an opportunity maybe to look across any area of a port, that sometimes you see some luxurious yachts, and oftentimes you hear about these billion-dollar yachts or a yacht for $500 and $600 million, and obviously sometimes bearing the name of another state. It is important that we recognize that in Barbados, and there are a number of persons out there who support Barbados, who like Barbados, and certainly will want to register their yachts and our cruise ships, and therefore this gives us an opportunity for even not only more revenue, but other economic opportunities, and certainly opportunities for employment as well. One very interesting component of the merchant shipping suite has to do with gender mainstreaming in shipping. At clauses 195 to 216, the bill details the framework to advance at the national level the international maritime gender policy. The gender policy is that states should undertake the necessary measures to bring about gender balance in the maritime industry. And that is contained at clauses 195 to 216. General matters in respect of ships, especially those carrying the Barbados flag, at clauses 217 to 226 of the bill, it addresses general matters in respect of the Barbados ships in relation to the national colors and national flag, and also it requires that those foreign ships who carry the Barbados flag do so in a manner that is consistent with the decorum and the national character of Barbados by ships in the port and parcels, obviously, of the areas of marine security and safety. The clauses 227 to 243, the bill makes provision for the registration and management of autonomous vessels and remote ship operations. The merchant shipping bill is unique in this sense, in that it provides the regulatory framework for conventionally manned merchant vessels and remotely operated or fully autonomous vessels. As you can detect, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are looking to the future. You know, the world is changing, and therefore, as we modernize our legislation, it is important for us to ensure that we move with the times. And clauses 227 to 243 would help us in terms of not only maintaining our advancement within this sector, but also ensuring that we comply with the IMO conventions. Within the IMO, there's the merchant shipping classifications. In fact, there are 4 degrees of autonomous ships. Degree 1, I'm told, is the ship with an automated processes and decision support. Seafarers are on board to operate and control the ship. There's degree 2, where you have remotely controlled ship with seafarers on board. The ship is controlled and operated from another location, but seafarers are on board. The degree 3, remotely controlled ship without seafarers on board, and the ship is controlled and operated from another location. So you can see how far we're going into the future. And degree 4 is that you have the fully autonomous ship. Operating system of the ship is able to make decisions and determine actions by itself. Of course, the latter is still within the IMO framework emerging, and therefore there will be changes to that particular degree, degree 4, as we continue with the progress. But the important thing is that this now allows Barbados not only to modernize its legislation, but it encourages us to foster not only regional and international collaboration from this jurisdiction, but it also provides for the establishment of a National Maritime Vessels Remote Operations Center. In respect of clauses 244 to 264, ship mortgages, the bill deals with ship mortgages affairs and implements the IMO Convention on Maritime Liens and Mortgages. It is crucial to note that a ship owner transfers a security interest in the ship to a lender as collateral for a mortgage loan in a ship. And a ship mortgage is legally composed of three components, similar to other forms of mortgages, of course. You have the mortgage loan, you have the mortgage document, and you have the rights arising from the mortgage deed granted to the moneylender. Merchant shipping laws are the legal foundations for ship mortgages in many shipping nations, and is tied to vessel registration. And in maritime law, I'm told that only registered ships are eligible for statutory legal mortgages. And this bill provides for registration of vessels under construction so that a legal mortgage can be obtained in respect of a vessel. So we are forward thinking in the sense that we're not only thinking about when the vessel is constructed, but before it is constructed, you have an opportunity, if you wish to engage in ship finance, you can do so from this location because you will have the necessary IMO credentials written into the legislation to help support and advance the areas of finance within shipping. Of course, ship mortgages enable, as we know, the building and purchasing of other financial related ventures in respect of ships and their undertakings. And it is important that within the regime of the merchant shipping bill, that we decided it was necessary to level the playing field between the mortgages, obviously those who borrow money, and of course, certainly the lenders. International maritime safety is also well embedded within that particular section. Vessel registration comes from the responsibility of the country of registration to ensure the vessels registered under its flag state complies, of course, with all of the required international maritime related regulations. The economic safeguards in shipping, those are found at clauses 295 to 296 of the bill, which implements the International Convention on Tonnage Measurement of Ships. That is why I took the time as we introduced the bill to settle a lot of the conventions that were either absent and those that were necessary for the future build-out of the economic development of the maritime sector. Not only did we look at the maritime safety, but we also look at the economic safety net to ships based on a universal tonnage measure. Of course, when you have tonnage measurement, you can also, when you're registering the ship, benefit from additional revenue. And therefore, it is important that the ship tonnage be calculated in accordance with the single international system for determining the ship's tonnage, which is enshrined in the Tonnage Convention, which is obviously associated with the bill. The other maritime safety standards are to be found at clauses 297 to 459 of the bill. It is expansive because obviously the International Maritime Organization places a significant premium on safety, not only with respect to ship safety, but of course to the safety of all those on board a ship. And of course, with the technology that we are using on board, technology being employed on ships, it is necessary that safety mechanisms be put in place to ensure that we minimize not only injury to those on board, but also to the vessels, because you could well imagine that if you don't pay particular attention to safety and the ship should go underground, the potential for oil spills and everything else would cause significant damage to our environment. So the bill indicated at clauses 297 to 459 all of the required international maritime safety regime in respect of ships. It talks about the maritime meteorological services. It talks about safe container shipping. It talks about the maritime search and rescue operations, preventing collisions at sea, safety of life at sea, the ship load capacity, and all of the associated areas of safety. The bill, clause 314, within that section of maritime safety, also speaks to the digital twin by Barbados Port Inc. A digital twin is a digital replica of a vessel, port, or other physical asset used in the maritime industry, including its related processes, systems, and information. And digital twinning is an acknowledged opportunity for the maritime sector improvement. And there's no doubt that the digital twin is the future of the maritime sector as well. Madam Deputy Speaker, and I know I'm taking some time to go through the bill, but I also want to make the point that in respect of safety, the bill pretty much supports the safety regime followed by the International Maritime Organization. There's also we have a number of subsidiary instruments. Those are obviously contained in the bill. And in respect of the International Maritime Environmental Protection Standards, of course, this is very important because we know that ships could, if there's an accident, there could be pollution. Depends if it's a regular cargo ship or it's a oil tanker ferrying oil or diesel or whatever that is necessary, could create, especially for a country like Barbados, significant challenges, considering that we depend largely on the tourism sector. So clauses 460 to 649 of the bill addresses the environmental considerations in shipping. International maritime regulatory framework for preventing, reducing, and controlling pollution of the marine environment from various forms of ship-generated pollution are comprehensively addressed within these parts. Of course, the bill is supported by the following subsidiary instruments: the Merchant Shipping Oil Pollution Prevention Regulations, the Merchant Shipping Chemical Pollution, the Merchant Shipping Sewage and Garbage Pollution Prevention Regulations, the Merchant Shipping Anti-Fouling Systems, and a number of other, within that section, a number of other statutory instruments to ensure we maintain, obviously, an environment that is protective of our coastal lands. The International Maritime Security Standards, those are detailed at clauses 650 to 947 of the bill. And again, it addresses all of the safety considerations in shipping, maritime security and safety again. Those are very detailed within the bill. The maritime security regime is also supported by the instruments relating to merchant shipping, ship and port facility security, and the maritime security specific inspection requirements comprising the merchant shipping regulations on flag, port, and coastal state control. Of course, following through from that, we also have clauses 948 to 1033, a section which deals with shipwrecks. Of course, it deals with wreck removal and marine salvage. It is important, as I've indicated, and when we piloted other bills leading up to this bill, I spoke at length about the importance, of course, of wrecks and certainly in accordance with the wreck discoveries and sunken military craft regulation of the IMO. We are certainly in alignment in this bill with the IMO standards regarding wreck removal and marine salvage. Of course, we have to ensure that from time to time, there is a procedure for the removal of shipwrecks, because if we don't have the procedures in place, we could adversely affect the safety of lives, certainly of goods and property at sea, and in particular, the marine environment. In respect of shipping governance, clauses 1034 to 1052 of the bill presents the governance framework to ensure continued and effective regulation of shipping activities within the ambit of the flag, port, or coastal state control. This part is further supported by the merchant shipping flag state control regulations, the merchant shipping port state control regulations, and the merchant shipping coastal state regulations. A key feature of this shipping governance framework is the creation of a Barbados IMO compliance monitoring program, the work of which should be implemented by a national maritime performance audit committee. And that committee will be largely an interagency committee that will essentially perform internal audits on Barbados in relation to its international maritime obligations and make relevant corrections to shortcomings identified. Of course, the operationalization of the National Maritime Performance Audit Committee will keep Barbados abreast of its international maritime obligations and certainly position Barbados to continually improve on its performance under the external international maritime audits conducted by the IMO. So in other words, what we are saying, that we are not going to wait for all of these regulations to be advanced by the IMO, and then we find ourselves wanting or playing catch-up. What we're essentially effectively doing is putting the frameworks into law to ensure that, thanks to the wonderful officers that we have within the ministry responsible for guiding this policy, an opportunity to keep Barbados abreast and to maintain compliance with all of the IMO standards. Ship inspections and enforcement that is covered clauses 1053 to 1070. Of course, the bill outlines the procedures in respect of ship inspections and enforcement, and of course, the exercise of powers by the maritime authorities in relation to ships. Of course, again, when we brought other pieces of legislation relating to the maritime sector, those I took the opportunity and I went through them very clearly. There was extensive discourse with respect to the enforcement and obligations included Coast Guard and other entities, and therefore the sections, clauses 1053 to 1070 of the bill would protect Barbados in terms of its border and customs control procedure. Clauses 1071 to 1078 of the bill outlines procedures in relation to maritime accidents and certainly incident investigation and inquiries. It is further supported by the maritime shipping, maritime accidents and investigation regulations, and activities conducted within section 32 will be executed in accordance with the Code of the International Standards and Recommended Practices for a safety investigation into a marine casualty or marine incident, which is incorporated within the bill. Shipbuilding, recycling, and ship repair. Of course, this is a very exciting and interesting area. It is found at clauses 1079 to 1204 of the bill, which details a comprehensive framework for shipbuilding, ship repair, and ship recycling. Shipbuilding and ship recycling under the repair regime is separated into 5 divisions at part 33, and at each of these sections addressing specific aspects of shipbuilding, repair, and obviously the recycling. Of course, by incorporating this section into the bill, it allows Barbados now to benefit substantially from investments in dry docks. Of course, if you want to have a dry dock in Barbados, you will now have an opportunity to do so because the person or entity looking to invest in a dry dock in Barbados can look and say, Barbados has a modern legislative agenda which sets out very clearly and very comprehensively the framework for shipbuilding to be done in Barbados. And if we were fortunate to have an opportunity for a dry dock in Barbados, for example, that would create numerous opportunities. It would create numerous economic opportunities, numerous financial opportunities. Certainly, there will be jobs associated with it in terms of boat building, and of course, there'll be training. And it will allow a lot of our young people who are currently at the Samuel Jackman Institute of Technology and those who are working within BIMAP, advancing their careers and training within the maritime sector. It would allow them and others to build out a sector which we believe should be done in Barbados. When I look across the region, I believe in terms of a dry dock for larger vessels, you find, for example, I believe is in the Nassau, in the Bahamas, where they have a dry dock, and they have done a lot of work there in terms of building out capacity and thereby contributing not only to economic activity, but like I said, creating even more jobs. So the bill is forward thinking in its approach by seeking to ensure that we have a very comprehensive framework for shipbuilding, ship repair, and ship recycling. Obviously, Madam Deputy Speaker, the bill, like most bills, would have a miscellaneous clause. These clauses are found at 1,205 to 1,488. It is separated into 14 divisions, which outline the miscellaneous matters in respect of the merchant shipping bill. The miscellaneous matters would range, Madam Deputy Speaker, from offenses, maritime jurisdictional matters regarding ships, ship detentions, procedures to be followed in relation to births and deaths on ships, matters pertaining to maritime documentation, marine notices, vessel arrests, judicial sale of ships, general average, commercial shipping contracts and practices, other maritime compliance requirements, ministerial powers relating to the making of regulations, and the amendment of schedules to the legislation. I don't think I have to go through those in detail because I think they're adequately set out, and members obviously would have had an opportunity to review the bill ahead of the debate. In terms of the future and current actions of the ministry, of course, the bill sets out a national maritime administrative framework. The recently established Barbados Maritime Transport Administration within my ministry, which is responsible for maritime transport affairs, of course, is in the process of being built out. We are working with the Ministry of the Public Service to outfit the Barbados Maritime Transport Administration with the requisite human resources it needs to effectively address the administrative related deficiencies identified in the 2018 IMO audit. We will continue certainly to upskill. We will continue to ensure that our officers within the ministry benefit from the best possible training, that they attend regular IMO workshops and seminars to ensure that they maintain their knowledge in terms of the currency of affairs associated within the maritime sector. Of course, we are also within the ministry engaged with those tertiary level institutions, providing training, as I indicated, within the Samuel Jackman Institute of Technology, as well as the BIMAP. Those are responsible. So we are on the road to building out and upskilling within the ministry. And therefore, it is important that we continue to facilitate this process within the ministry. The bill covers a wide range of activities, but I think it is safe to say, if we had to look at the benefits of the merchant shipping bill to Barbados, I've spoken about some of those initiatives, but I think it is important for us to look at the suite of laws and what it promises. And for us in Barbados, those are immeasurable benefits for Barbados, including the advancement of Barbados's mercantile marine sector in the best manner to serve the national interest. Of course, we want to promote the growth in fleet, which is a direct result of the ship registration activities that I would have spoken to. We want to talk about the ease to meet ship registration requirements, which will attract various kinds of vessels to Barbados, the development of opportunities for ancillary industries to support the marine sector, and I listed some of those, included the issue of shipbuilding, ship repairs, and ship recycling services, certainly, and marine financial services. Tonnage revenues increase, of course, due to ship registration activities. Ships of various sizes as measured in tonnage and associated registration fees and other vessel-related services according to the basis of the ship's tonnage. That is another significant benefit. The ability to provide and financially benefit from IMO statutory certification services by virtue of domesticating IMO instruments into our national law, better and continued improved performance on future IMO audits, the improved reputation of Barbados as a shipping nation that is fully aligned in terms of its maritime regulatory framework with global maritime standards and best practices, and the legal basis for administering and implementing the international maritime laws on marine safety, security, marine pollution from ships, and as a result, giving force into law of the international maritime instruments. Of course, it will level the playing field for Barbados to competitively engage in international seaborne trade and commerce, training and employment opportunities in the seagoing and shore-based maritime sector, promotion of public-private partnerships in merchant shipping sector, a platform for increased participation by the private sector shipping organizations in merchant shipping sector development, and harnessing of diverse investment opportunities in Barbados's merchant marine sector from cargo, cruise, yacht, ferrying, and other related sectors with shipping support. And of course, the continual bringing of minds together to pool in various approaches to the merchant shipping sector development. And to this end, Clause 1473 of the bill provides for an individual or group representing the merchant sector to propose strategies and initiatives to the administration that will benefit Barbados's merchant shipping sector. And that was also explained in relation to a similar clause within the Shipping Domestic Vessels Act that was proclaimed not so long ago. So that predominantly deals with the first section of the first bill. The second bill, which is what I referred to, the second bill, as noted, is the Merchant Shipping Liability and Compensation Bill. Again, shipping and shipping-related activities generally concern ship owners and ship operators, cargo owners, insurers, support authorities, and other maritime stakeholders. Now, of course, loss of life, injury, and environmental damage arising out of a maritime casualty will affect maritime and non-maritime stakeholders and has significant far-reaching effects. It is for this reason that the International Maritime Organization has developed the Liability and Compensation Conventions. Of course, the Liability and Compensation Convention of the IMO, those conventions we have incorporated into the Merchant Shipping Liability and Compensation Bill. Of course, the IMO liability and compensation instruments strike a balance to ensure, on one hand, a successful claim can be adequately compensated. Claimant can be adequately compensated for any loss or injury or damage suffered in respect of a ship, and on the other hand, to ensure that ship owners can limit their liability to an amount which is already insurable at a reasonable premium. So we have incorporated and given life to the IMO instruments. The International Convention on Civil Liability for Oil Pollution Damage 1969 is incorporated within the Liability and Compensation Bill. The 1992 Protocol, as amended to the International Convention on the Establishment of an international fund for compensation for oil pollution damage, the convention relating to civil liability in the field of maritime carriage of nuclear material 1971 as amended, the International Convention on Liability and Compensation for Damage in connection with the carriage of hazardous and noxious substances by sea as amended by its 2010 protocol to the HNS Convention, the Convention on the Limitation of Liability for Maritime Claims as amended by the 1996 protocol, the Athens Convention relating to the carriage of passengers and their luggage by sea as amended by the 2002 protocol, and the International Convention on Civil Liability for Bunker Oil Pollution Damage 2001 as amended. Of course, it sounds like a mouthpiece, but it's important if we want to maintain a jurisdiction that has a modern maritime infrastructure, a jurisdiction that is fully compliant with IMO regulations. It is important that we adopt those matters. Of course, we have situations where we will have to manage in accordance with the legislation, and therefore it is necessary that within the purview of the law, that marine insurance, which is clearly going to be an essential component of international liability framework, that marine insurance is obviously in a wider sector, and that it not only operates beyond the confines of liability and compensation regimes for ships, but will be seen under the coming, that will be noted, I should say, within the coming Marine Insurance Industry Act. The fishing industry and the IMO, and I think it is important that we discuss this. Barbados' fishing industry will be afforded by virtue of regulations subsidiary to the Merchant Shipping Liability Compensation Bill, the opportunity to benefit from the IMO Maritime Liability and Compensation System. It is for this reason that the Food and Agriculture Organization and the International Maritime Organization are desirous of protecting fisherfolk, and in this regard, enable fishing vessels to benefit from IMO liability and compensation systems. Of course, the IMO maritime liability regime, insurance or other forms of financial security is compulsory for ship owners, and the IMO has made insurance or other forms of financial security compulsory for fear that without doing it, claimants may not be able to claim compensation due to them as a result of a maritime accident. We are certainly moving full speed ahead to ensure that the work with the FAO and the IMO and all of the necessary regulations that will evolve from that, of course, for the fishing sector, that we move to ensure that owners of fishing vessels and have at least third-party insurance in place to cover the vast majority of third-party claims, obviously subject to the limitations of the IMO 1976 Convention on Limitation of Liability. Of course, there is a number of other related matters concerning the bill. Of course, the coming merchant shipping limitation of liability relating to war and terrorism regulations. Again, this is in accordance with the Athens Convention, and therefore the carriage of passengers and luggage at sea is amended. We will bring that into force as well, so that we'll be protected. We are also drafting the direct draft instructions to direct the preparation of the merchant shipping limitation of liability relating to war and terrorism claims have been crafted, and once all of the required processes in relation to the said regulations have been satisfied, these regulations will serve as an instrument to the 2006 reservation to the Athens Marine Convention relating to war and terrorism, and the said merchant shipping limitation of liability relating to wars and terrorism claims regulations will be subsidiary to the eventual Shipping Liability and Compensation Act. In other words, once we've completed that work, then we will satisfy the regulations within the bill. I think obviously, I'm trying to go through it as quickly as I can, but the issues relating to a marine incident, obviously, within the liability and compensation bill, it will deal adequate with personal injury and death, loss of or damage to the vessel, loss of or damage to cargo, the environmental damage, economic losses, costs associated with preventive measures, and of course, expenditure related to the cleanup costs. And this is very much an issue that we have to monitor, especially considering, like I said earlier, Barbados' economic stability is largely structured and earnings structured around, in part, tourism revenues. The third bill, featuring the merchant shipping maritime marge bill, this is a not too difficult one in the sense that, of course, we know that vessels, including cruise ships and yachts, have throughout time facilitated marriages by providing onboard space to accommodate persons desirous of marrying at sea. Of course, there's the international convention to which Barbados is a party regarding places various obligations on the flag state. There are also the social aspects of shipping in respect of seafarers regulated, and of course, the Common Seafarers Suite of laws in alignment with the Law of the Sea Convention, the International Convention on Standards of Training, Certification, and Watchkeeping for Seafarers, and Maritime Labor Conventions will also be coming very short, if not certainly this year. In the new year, 2025, we will have the Merchant Seafarers Suite coming to this chamber. But as it relates to the Maritime Shipping Maritime Marge Bill, it provides a regulatory framework for the conduct and the formalities of marriages on board ships, on board Barbados ships, irrespective of where those ships may be operating, the licensing of ship captains to function as marriage officers and married persons on board Barbados ships, the recognition of marriages on board ships as having been taken place in Barbados, and a regulatory framework to support obtaining a legally recognized marriage in the maritime context. Of course, we all know that a ship captain doesn't generally have the right to officiate a wedding, but in order to do so, the person would have to be legally authorized to do so. And therefore, we're moving with great haste to ensure that this bill, once it passes this chamber and the other place, would allow for the facilitation of marriages on Barbados flag ships. Of course, the existing Marriage Act 218A regulates land-based marriages, and that obviously the contents with respect to this bill, it is consistent with the existing Marriage Act, so that is protected, so there's no changes in respect of the marriage bill, Cap 218A, and this and what we have included within the this proposed bill. Of course, the bill will enable official wedding ceremonies to take place far out at sea, including in waters beyond Barbados' jurisdiction and on ships docked in ports. Of course, it will also allow for those who are in the business, for example, of cruise ships and who wish to get married on cruise ships, that they can do so even on a Barbados flag ship. In conclusion, obviously, once we confirm, as we've done, the United Nations Convention on Law of the Seas, to which Barbados is a party and a flag state, with social responsibilities such as marriages in relation to flying the Barbados flag, the Merchant Shipping Maritime Marriage Bill will provide a regulatory framework, like I said, for the conduct and formalities of marriages on board ships, irrespective of where those ships may be operating, the licensing of a ship captain to function as a marriage officer and to marry a person on board a Barbados ship, the recognition of marriages on board Barbados ships of having taken place in Barbados, and of course the regulation and the regulatory framework to support obtaining a legally recognized marriage in the maritime context. So the bill is far-reaching. It follows, as I indicated, the marriage bill, so there's no issue with respect to that matter. In respect of the fourth bill, the Merchant Shipping Liner Conferences Bill, the UN Convention on a Code of Conduct for Liner Conferences broke new ground in the international shipping legislation to the extent that it deliberately seeks to effectively regulate an important sector of international shipping, namely the liner conference sector, which has been self-regulating ever since the first liner conference was held, I believe it was the Calcutta Conference back in 1875. Of course, the adoption of the convention sets the seal on several years of efforts, particularly on the part of developing countries, to bring about a change in operation and practices of liner conferences that will promote an equitable balance of interest between liner operators and shippers on the one hand, and between the old-timers and newcomers to the liner shipping on the other hand. Of course, the importance of a liner, the liner conference system also requires, as to a shipping conference system, is an agreement with the shipping sector in relation to ocean liners. Generally, the agreement is between two or more shipping companies to provide scheduled cargo and or passenger services on a particular trade route under the uniform rates and common terms. The expression liner conference designates a group of maritime carriers providing international liner services for the transport of cargo on a particular route or routes within the specified geographical limits, which operates pursuant to an agreement setting out uniform or common freight rates. Of course, a freight rate must be obtained so that all expenses are covered, with remainder sufficient for the returns on investment. In analysis of economic merit of shipping project, this rate is often referred to as the required freight rate. The benefits of the liner conference system to Barbados shipping sector would include stability of freight rates, services, and schedule for shippers, no discrimination between shippers served as, by a conference. A shipper is ensured that its competitors cannot gain lower rates by shopping around. The regular shipping service creates confidence for both ship owners and shippers that business is secure. Conferences provide broader geographical coverage than individual lines, as well as a variety of ships with flexibility. The elimination of competition between members of the conference lead to increased partnerships and collaboration in the interest of continued and sustainable seaborne trade and commerce, and weaker lines, which may be eliminated in free competition regime, survive under the haven of the liner conferences. Of course, the liner conferences play a significant role in global trade because it has the ability to lower transport costs. Lower costs of shipping makes transport of goods overseas easier. Prices of goods may be reduced, and there is increased product variety and better consumer choices, and obviously contributes to the enhanced standard of living. And therefore, the Merchant Shipping Liner Bill, once enacted, will repeal the Liner Conferences Act Cap 290. The existing act, though it gives force to the law of the United Nations Convention on a Code of Conduct for Liner Conferences, does not effectively implement the code as per UNCTAD guidelines toward the application of the Convention on a Code of Conduct for the Liner Conferences. The fifth and final bill, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the Merchant Shipping Multimodal Transport Bill. The international regulatory framework for seaborne trade and commerce is embedded in the international standards. The Cognate, Maritime International, the Baltic International Maritime Council, United Nations Conference for Trade and Development, and also the United Nations Commission for International Trade Law. The work of these international organizations is commercial in focus, and they play a pivotal role in driving maritime commerce and trade. This is unlike the International Maritime Organization, whose work is not commercial. And obviously, the IMO has expressly stated that its role is to create a level playing field so that ship operators cannot address their financial issues by simply cutting corners and compromising on safety, security, and environmental performance. The bill is concerned mainly with maritime commercial activities, specifically the carriage of goods by sea, and the bill operates in the area of maritime law known as law of carriage of goods by sea, and that that law is generally referred to as a dry shipping law because it mainly focuses on the legal implications of the agreements for the transport of cargo by sea and for the chartering of vessels. According to the interpretation section of the bill, multimodal transport means the transport of goods under a single contract but performed with more than one mode of transport, one of which includes transport by sea. This may include air and land as part of the transport process. The importance of the multimodal sector, another key advantage of the multimodal transport is its ability to leverage the strengths of different modes of transport. For example, water transport with its large carrying capacity is ideal for bulk shipments, and air transport provides high-speed connections for time-sensitive goods or perishable items. Of course, multimodal transport also helps us to alleviate congestion on specific modes of transport by diverting some of the traffic from heavily congested routes. Multimodal transport reduces the strain on the infrastructure and improves overall traffic flow. The bill is not long in the sense that it sets out what the comprehensive regulatory regime for the carriage of goods involving various modes, like I said, including sea and other modes of transportation. Its aim, obviously, is secure uniformity by way of predictable content in the contracts of the carriage, and obviously be guided by the IMO conventions and regulations. And for that reason, we felt it necessary that we had to enshrine that within the suite of shipping laws. Madam Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, I think it's fair to say that the 5 bills and the 22 regulations comprising the merchant shipping suite of laws provide a legislative framework that is internationally recognized, reflective of international best practices across the spectrum of activities in the merchant shipping sector. The suite of laws promote compliance with international maritime standards and requirements, yet providing a platform for development and growth in shore-based and ocean-based arenas in terms of shipping. Before I conclude, let me also thank the Office of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, CPC, for its coordination, oversight, and the assiduous efforts in ensuring the timely completion of the merchant shipping suite of laws comprising the 5 bills, as I indicated, in view of the pending IMO audit. Let me also thank Mr. Paul Sleinberg Rogers. I know, Madam Deputy Speaker, I didn't ask your permission to call the names, but I believe it's important enough, and for that I apologize. And with your permission, I can go ahead. The legislative and drafting specialists who assisted the Chief Parliamentary Counsel in converting the drafting instructions for the 5 merchant shipping bills and associated 22 regulations into legislation. Let me also thank the London-based team of the Barbados Maritime Ships Registry, who administers and executes the flag state control responsibilities in respect of Barbados's registered international vessels registered on the International Ships Register and manages the International Ships Registry on behalf of the Government of Barbados. Let me also thank Dr. Nigel Taylor, MARIS Chairman, for his contributions from the draft and instruction stage through to the bill, ensuring that notwithstanding the maritime aspects of marriage at sea, Barbados's marital customs, practices, and procedures were effectively woven into the new maritime marriage framework. Let me also thank the port management, some of those who are present with us, the CEO, David John Marie, Captain Carol Branch, and of course, Romel Edwards for their contribution from the port's perspective. Let me also recognize, and they're here with us in the chamber as well, Ms. Nigel King, who is the Director of Maritime Affairs Acting, and Dion Gibbs-Nichols, who's the Chief Technical Officer Acting within the ministry. They're both with us today, the ladies. They have done considerable work in order for us to advance these bills. I must tell you that I didn't know much about shipping at all. When I went to the ministry, the Honourable Member for St. Michael's South told me that I have a very fine team up there, and he included Ms. Nigel King, the Director, and Ms. Dion Gibbs-Nichols. So he told me that I was in safe hands, and I must tell you that indeed I am in safe hands with the ladies who've prepared it. I really have to congratulate them for the efforts and all the work coordinating with CPC regarding the other pieces of legislation that we brought to this Parliament. We are not finished yet. We have 2 additional pieces of legislation which we intend to bring to the Parliament this year, the Maritime Heritage and certainly the Seaport Bill. But finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I think that the fact that we've been able to accomplish as many laws this year within this chamber, and certainly the bills laid today and debated, I think is a wonderful opportunity that this is now going to present a wonderful opportunity for Barbados, not only to make Barbados more attractive, but also to create other opportunities in finance and shipbuilding, and also to build additional employment, and also, Madam Deputy Speaker, to ensure that we implement a framework that is attractive, one that we can advance, one that we are proud of, and certainly correcting all of the legislative deficits that were left with us. And I must say that once we continue to build out this sector, and I have every confidence when it comes to the audit that Barbados will do well, but every confidence that with these new pieces of legislation and pending legislation to come, that the framework for Barbados in terms of positioning itself as a major player within the Caribbean and on the international scene will give us the benefits that we deserve within this sector. And Madam Deputy Speaker, with those few remarks, I would like to ask that order number 11, the Merchant Shipping Bill and associated references, be read a second time.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the last occasion I spoke in this place, I would have lamented the absence of several of my parliamentary colleagues. Today it is not a lament nor a complaint, because I come to commiserate with those who are absent. I know what the last weekend did to some of them. And I look to my left, normally there's a fairly significant presence today. They're not here, and I do wish the best for my colleague from St. Andrew. I understand he's indisposed today after the affray at Churchill. And I do wish him well. I understand that after the karaoke and rum, after the rum was served, he may have suffered some.
Honourable Member, please. I would wish you, sir, to...
No, I'm commiserating.
Please,
Yes.
so, the Honourable Members are here, and I'm glad that you have acknowledged
Yes.
that he has some injury.
Yes.
But please do it with grace.
Yes, of course.
Because I'm sure that he and
Yes.
all of us
Yes.
would want to extend
Yes.
well wishes
I do.
and to be using the best of
Yes.
decorum to be able to present it, sir.
I'm obliged to you,
So
ma'am.
go ahead, Ed.
And I do,
Madam Deputy Speaker, if I can, I just raise on a point of order.
Acknowledge, ma'am.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition seeks to impute the character of the Honourable Member for St. Andrew. I heard the words alcohol being mentioned. I know that the colour red disturbs him, and anything related to anybody who is associated with a party that he was
And
once a member of.
I think he missed his.
I think he
wonderful
misses us, and, red floors or red benches seem to, trouble the soul of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. But I want to just make it clear that the Honourable Member for St. Andrew is well. Unfortunately, a light that was inside of the hall at our conference fell on him, and he sustained an injury to his head. So all of these rumors and innuendos that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition seeks to enjoy and titillate his fancy, I too would want to wish him well, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I would hope that this place is not reduced to what the Leader of the Opposition seeks to do, but he is alive and well.
Thank you for your intervention, ma'am. And we all pray that the honourable member for St. Andrew will heal well, and I'll give the opportunity to the honourable member for Christchurch South and Leader of the Opposition to let us get to this maritime discussion.
yes, and
so
I
that
am
we
grateful, I'm
share
grateful
our
for the
knowledge.
confirmation and clarification that the Honourable Member for St. Andrew is indeed well, and I stand indebted to the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East for clarifying that he was not struck with a big rock by somebody who was fighting for food, but that a light fell on him and hurt his head. And I last heard that he was in an ambulance being attended to, and I was deeply concerned. So that we confirm that he was not injured during the fight. And I am,
Honourable member.
yes, ma'am.
How is that relevant to our discussion, sir? I'd be grateful if you will please get to the debate so that we can get the shipment.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I
resolved.
believe the Honourable Member is thinking about fights that take place at George Street.
And they're numerous. Honourable member, please.
Yes,
Your
ma'am.
opportunity to make.
All of this amounts to commiseration. And of course, as I said, I'm grateful to you, ma'am. You've asked me to extend my commiseration with some grace.
Sure.
And I'm trying to do that and to genuinely express commiseration
I
to
know
the
that
Honourable Member for St. Andrew.
I know that you have, sir. I'm grateful because
Yes.
at the inception, the impression would have been that you wanted to, in some way, cast aspersions on a matter which we will not deal with. I know you're legally trained.
Yes.
But let us, sir, get to the business and be
Yes.
dignified
Yes,
as the
yes,
young people
yes.
of Barbados and the seniors and
Indeed,
others
yeah.
know of the high standard of this honorable chamber for
Yes.
so many decades. Let us keep the standard
Yes,
high
yes.
and leave that matter for George Street and any other community where you will want to say, but the honorable member and leader has explained the situation, and we are grateful and we understand because we know what transpired. Please, let us get to the maritime discussion. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. And please be assured that the commiserations extended to the Honourable Member for St. Andrew, please be assured that those commiserations are genuine and that the country, you see, this political engagement is hazardous.
It is.
And sometimes we don't understand how much at risk we are as politicians. And therefore, I came here today, when I did not see him, I feared that he may have been more exposed to the hazards than his colleagues who are also not with us today. I don't know the extent of their indisposition following what seems to have occurred up there. The public will want to know, but what the public is entitled to know, and they will be happy to know that the Honourable Member for St. Andrew is recovering well after his experience at Churchill on the weekend, and that he was not associated with any food or rum fight, that a light fell on him and that he is well.
Honorable member, please. We know that for many, many years, this honorable chamber does not have every member in place at time. Many of them, and now that they're ministers and they're leading other sections in this society, they will not be always on time. And I will not wish you, sir, to reflect on any negativity, the honorable member for St. Andrew or anywhere else. When you, sir, know, when you were on the side of the government, that there were reasons why. And I am happy, sir, to see you here today, because there are many days when you do not turn up, and when you do, it's time to close. So we're not going to be asking classic aspersions or anybody's name or character. We are here to do the people's business, sir. And therefore, the honorable member for St. Andrew and no other member on the honorable side, sir, when you had all of your confusion that still continues in George Street, we have not reflected on it because this is the highest chamber. Young people are listening, old people are listening, everything is going international, and the standard of this honorable chamber must continue, and I'm not going to let anybody drop it in the gutter. So, sir, please let us get to the maritime discussion that we're onto today so that the members here can know of your agreement or your disagreement. That is your privilege, but we want this high standard to be upheld, whether I am in the chamber as the leader today or the honorable member who is not here. We're here. We're not going to be going into the gutter on matters that do not concern this honorable chamber at all. And that is why a lot of people are saying Parliament is this, Parliament is that, in a negative way, because we are carrying that negative image, and it has to be stopped if I am in this honorable chamber. So, sir, please let us get to the debate so that we can know what you want to say about this maritime matter and the excellent work that has transpired. But I'm not going to give you any more cues, just in case you hadn't heard the honorable member who is the minister in this presentation. I will give you your opportunity, sir, to be able to debate this matter. Thank you for your kindness.
I'm obliged to you, Madam Deputy Chair, and with your lead, having heard the nature of the legislation that comes to the chamber today, let us agree then to sail into more placid waters of the legislation and to remove the debate presently from the violence that may have taken place elsewhere. Let us now sail into the placid waters of the maritime legislation that came.
Honorable member, here to interrupt you, because you have gone right back. I know that I was in the classroom for 30 years, dealing with infants and reception and other children. We have never had this standard in our schools. We are not being it to this honorable chamber, especially if I'm here. Were the honorable speaker here, we would not have had this matter from you, sir. We did not pay any attention to what was going on in George Street with the fighting and the cursing and the locking out. Please do not let this chamber be reduced to that level. Let us keep that high standard. Once I'm in this chair, I am going to try my best as a simple country girl to maintain those standards of so many decades of this honorable chamber being recognized by the public and the rest of the world as the honorable chamber of Barbados. Sir, please get to the debate. In the interest of time and in the interest of your members on your side, in the other place, knowing exactly what is happening and how they too can help us to build out Barbados and separate that political divide that should never be in here this morning. Therefore, sir, I give way to you. Use your opportunity in the best way you can. Thank you, sir.
You're most gracious, Madam Deputy Speaker.
That is because I'm in the seat, sir.
Yes.
Were I on the outside, I would have said other things, but not
Yes.
with any negative language, because I don't curse anymore. I ask God to remove it.
You don't curse anymore.
No, sir. Otherwise, I would have cursed you, but I wouldn't do that.
No,
I so
please, sir.
highly respect you, because you
Yes.
were one of the honorable members over here, and we always respected each other. In the
course.
interest of time, sir,
Yes.
would you please get to your opportunity
Yes,
to do
yes,
the debating?
Yes. Let us, yes.
Thank you, sir.
As I was saying, let us move into placid waters of the legislation. Just to make the observation that the Honourable Minister spoke very softly and gently. I listened to him, though. I listened to every word he said, and I made my notes. I suspect you and I were the two in this chamber who listened most attentively to his dulcet tones. But a lot of what the Honourable Minister said in relation to the legislation, a lot of it is standard, a lot of it based on treaties, and he would be one of the first among us to admit to you that a lot of this legislation is really lifted from treaties. This is not, though, to diminish the good work done by those whose names he called. And he did confess that when he came to the ministry, that if this were his first day in the ministry, he would know absolutely nothing of what he spoke, but that the honourable member for St. Michael South would have assured him, this is what he said, this is what the honourable member said, that the honourable member for St. Michael South would have assured him that he was in good hands. You see, I listened to everything. Even while commiserating, I listened to everything. And I would therefore want to congratulate the honourable member for familiarizing himself not only with his staff, but with the various treaties that would have informed this voluminous, that was his word, and it's a good word, this voluminous legislation which comes to the House today. And so one would not greet it with much controversy, except to, having said that, it is based largely on treaties to which Barbados is obviously a signatory, and those on the other side who have some familiarity with international law and the concept of dualism. I will now speak to the lawyers. Dualism, that international conventions really only become the law when they are brought to this place and made national law. And so with what I heard from my parliamentary colleague, the honourable member for St. Michael West Central, he would not have said it, but a lot of this is an embrace of international treaties, except though that one is still entitled to make comment, one is still entitled to constructively criticize even an international treaty, but he need not fear. He will not hear much of that today when matters are tested in several other countries. There often is not a good reason to test them here or to question them here or to contest them here unless there are peculiar circumstances that attend the working of that legislation. I want to say to the honourable member for St. Michael West Central, though, and he is one of the more congenial and polite ones in Barbados. And he...
Please continue, sir. We are listening carefully.
Yes, I'm glad you recognize that I was interrupted.
Yeah, and we acknowledge any kudos that you will be extending
Yes.
to members and others, as we would to you, sir.
Yes.
In every respect, whether you're on our side or the other side.
I wonder what is the spirit that attends us today, ma'am. But let us press on.
Maybe the spirit you brought in, sir.
I brought it. It's a good spirit.
Because it was always fine before you came.
Yes, it's a good spirit, though. But I want to say to the honourable member for St. Michael West Central that this question of licenses, there are Barbadians who feel that licenses to pilot craft around the coastlines of this country are still taking too long. That is something he may wish to attend to. This is constructive, ma'am. This is not to destroy the delivery of the honourable member's speech this morning. As I said, he did it very quietly in a very congenial fashion. You and I listened. We were probably a minority in that regard, but you and I listened very carefully. And we would want to ask him to revisit this very competent staff that he has and to ensure that persons who apply for licenses to manage craft around the coastlines of this country can now get those licenses in quicker time. There is that concern. I don't know if the minister is aware of it, but there is that concern. Now, one of the other criticisms made of the legislation, and the honourable member did confess that it is voluminous, and one of the criticisms coming from within the, I would call it the boating community, is that this legislation may be so cumbersome as to have its intricacies escape the notice and the attention and certainly the understanding of those to whom it intends to apply. One criticism was that perhaps it could have been broken down into smaller pieces of legislation, but that would have been difficult because there's some, as speaking as a lawyer, there are some things that you really cannot dissect and have them make sense independently. So that while the criticism is made, the concession is also extended, that you can't always break legislation up and hope to have it retain its meaning. There's a good spirit in here, very good spirit in here. That's water. I don't drink, ma'am. Like you, I don't drink.
Conclude, sir. Continue.
Yes. Now, I believe you will allow me, Your Honor, to extend the debate to all matters of maritime activity. I believe you will allow me that opportunity, that I don't have to come here and speak exclusively about large ships that visit this place, that you will allow me today to go to the smaller craft. And the honourable member for St. Michael West Central did touch smaller craft, as he is obliged so to do. And I want to further introduce to this chamber and to you, ma'am, and to the honourable member who spoke, the crisis that faces the smaller craft in this country, because this can be a very beautifully sanitized debate today if we restrict ourselves to what is immediately before us. This very beautiful piece of legislation, over 1,000 pages. It may mean little or nothing to the man in Oistins. Today, the boat owner in Oistins, whose livelihood has been destroyed. And his concern must not be excluded from the consideration that this government is called upon to give to maritime affairs. The man with the smallest boat in 6 mains is engaged in maritime activity, and you, ma'am, today, you being the most gracious among us, you will allow a debate to touch and concern the life, the maritime life of the poor man from 6 mains and the man in crisis from Oistins. You will allow that, ma'am. And you will allow me, in so being concerned with their interests. Although we have a context here of highly sanitized and deodorized legislation that speaks of lofty matters of shipping on the high seas, let us come into the low places. And let us come to an industry described, a maritime industry, an aspect of the maritime industry, described by one member of that community this week as an industry that is on life support, the levity ends at that point. Because there are people in this country engaged in maritime activity whose lives are in peril. And I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. I can take the resistance to reason and permit me to say that my position, my earlier position, was based on reason, and that government was a contributor to the destruction of that less glamorous portion of the maritime industry when the storm came to this country. And destroyed 90-something% of the fishing boats that feed the people of not only this country, but this region. I heard the word absurd. And I welcome interruptions, I don't mind. Debate is dialectical.
Yeah, I haven't heard, therefore.
And you hear the thesis and the antithesis.
That was what a good lawyer should be hearing.
Yes, and in the context of the dialect, we will arrive at the synthesis. And I asked the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East, who uttered the word absurd in relation to what I posited. I asked her through you, ma'am, to consider to draw the inference as to why the Cognate Bay boating industry survived the hurricane and the southern portions of Barbados suffered destruction. Draw the inference. Where were the boats at Cognate when the hurricane was on its way and when the hurricane hit Barbados? Where were those boats? Why did the Cognate Bay industry survive while the Oystons and Bridgetown locations suffered close to 100% destruction? Draw the inference. And they criticized it on the last occasion, and I am back. I am back. The industry is not back. Those people are still suffering not only the loss of their boats, but the loss of a livelihood. Sincerely beg your pardon, ma'am. It remains a fact of maritime life in this country that the Cognate boats were hauled to safety. Said it before and I'm going to say it again. This is maritime legislation. They were hauled to safety. But the T20 World Cup final took priority over this government's obligation to protect an industry that is not glamorous. It may not be glamorous. It may not attract the attention of a government given to high flying. T20 finals. A T20 final became more important than the livelihood of some poor people in this country. And today we stand in this chamber. Today we stand in this chamber while one boatman, one fisherman, one boat owner, one fish vendor all say the same thing, that the industry is about to die. And what is this government's response? I don't accuse the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central of bringing this legislation in spite of the plight of those people. He has done, the Honourable Member has done what he must do. He has brought maritime legislation which applies to the lofty places. And perhaps it is not his responsibility to come into the low places. Bridgetown and Oystons and the places in the north, 6 mains. Perhaps it is not his business to go into those low places, but there must be a minister among the several that exist in this cabinet who must have responsibility for ensuring that this industry, which is on life support, which is close to its death, can be given some assurance that this government intends to revive it. So I'm grateful to the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central for doing his job, and perhaps doing it well. Perhaps he has done it well. But who among this government has been nominated to look after the interests of the poor fishermen who are also maritime agents? Who among you? Who among them, ma'am? In the aftermath of the T20 final, which was more important to this government than was the plight of the fishermen, a minister was sent to a meeting, not going to identify him, but he was sent to a meeting to look at them. That's all that meeting was about. That's my report. That's the faithful report I received. That a minister was sent to a meeting with the fishermen, and they were of the view that he was sent to look at them, and they looked at him. He was not a big works minister. That's the term that we heard. That's the term that we heard during the St. George by-election. All big works. Mom, don't be upset. I know I have your ear, though. I know I have your ear.
I heard St. George, and I don't know St. George has any Maritime anything, but
But that is true. I'm speaking of the
no,
by-election.
St. Thomas.
And I agree with you. It would be quite ironic to hear that St. George and St. Thomas have anything to do with maritime affairs. But I was talking about an election in which the ministers were divided by nomenclature into big works ministers and small ones. And apparently all big works had to go through a certain channel. And the word emerging from the fishing industry is that they sent a small works minister, because presumably if you have a big works minister, you must have a small works one. And the small works minister came and he looked at them, they looked at him. He said very little, they said very little. And emerging from that small works meeting was a decision to assist, and I use the word assist with some reluctance, to assist the industry, to give them 25% of the cost of retrieving their boats. 25%. And they've met that offer with contempt. And they've met that offer with contempt because they believe that the offer is contemptuous in the first place. And they believe that the offer of 25% for a boat that will cost up to $475,000 is a contemptuous offer. That's how they feel. That's how they feel. They feel that this government, while being concerned with the lofty matters of shipping, maritime shipping, merchant shipping, tourist liners, they feel that while this government is preoccupied with glamour and large business, they feel that this same government has little concern for the man from Oysters and Concept Bay and Western and the place down by St. Michael Northwest, if he's interested. The Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest is interested. They feel that their interest is not being looked after by this government. They feel that they belong to the maritime industry. They feel that this government does not consider them to be a part of the maritime industry of this country. So I admire the team, to be honest. All good people. Honest people. People involved at high levels. But ma'am, I want this government to come down to low levels. I want this government to come down to small works. I want this government to make an offer to the fishing industry. An offer that is acceptable. Boats range in price, Your Honor. I am going to give the government this information today. They don't know. Boats range in price from $200,000 up to $475,000. Yes, ma'am, you can write it. It's more than that. But look, ma'am, the Honourable Member for St. Michael South is helping us. He is willing to break ranks from among his government. I beg your pardon, ma'am?
Sir, I'm listening to you.
Oh, I saw you. I'm addressing you. And when you speak to other people, I feel obliged. I feel the courteous thing for me to do is to stop.
No, sir. I covered the microphone manually as
Oh, I see.
to say
Oh, I
one
see.
word to the honourable member.
Yes.
And I did.
Yes.
Carry on, sir.
So that the Honourable Member for St. Michael South now breaks ranks with his colleagues and discloses to them, because they don't know, that a small man's boat could cost as much, or could cost more than $475,000, and I'm indebted to him. And I want him to go to the next cabinet meeting and tell his honourable colleagues that if a boat can cost in excess of $475,000, it makes the sum, is it 25% or $25,000? But it makes the offer contemptuous, even more contemptuous. And they've been asking the government, if I lost my boat, where am I going to get this either 25,000, they will correct me. As I always say, here I have a right to be wrong. And there are times when I'm wrong. I confess to that. I'm not omniscient. The virtue in me is that I confess. But they never confess that they're wrong. And they are wrong very often. They're wrong very often. And they're wrong in this case for neglecting an industry. They're wrong for neglecting an industry, and this must be said in here. It matters not to me if they're uncomfortable today. I meet their discomfort with disappointment. And I'm disappointed that this government does not consider the small boat owners to be a part of maritime affairs. How sweet the name sounds, maritime affairs. But this government has essentially said to the boat owners that they don't belong. This government has said that they're indifferent to the plight of the industry, and that they sent one of their ministers, again, a nice man. There's no personal cause to spurn at him, except for the general. A nice man in a bad government is engaging in futility. A nice man in a bad government, I have no cause to spurn at him except for the general. And the general is that it's a bad government. It is a government that is not willing to assist an industry that has never been regarded in this country as among our glamorous social assets. They're just fishermen. They just sell some fish. They just feed a country. They just employ several people. With the discovery of all these contributions to the national economy, we remove the word just. They're not just these people. They're important people too. And all that you've heard me say, Your Honor, is to lead up to the conclusion that this government must come to the fishing industry with a serious offer to save the industry. We have tried to do rough calculations as to how many people are out of work, literally out of work, Your Honor. 250, and these are conservative estimates. 250 fishermen. You're from St. Thomas, ma'am. You probably did not know that there's something called a boat cleaner.
I'm a Bajan.
You're Bajan. Good.
And I know a lot.
And you know a lot.
Yes,
Good.
sir.
Good.
You can continue.
I almost asked you if you knew what happened on Saturday, but we've gone past that.
I know what happened
You know what happened?
in Christchurch.
Let us not be
South
distracted by that, ma'am.
I'm not going to interrupt you anymore, other members.
Right, let us not be distracted by
Yes,
that.
please.
But there's something called a boat cleaner. 50 of them out of work. The vendors. You know, ma'am, one of the attractions of the fishing industry is the aspect of fresh fish. The boats come in. This is how it has been traditionally. The boats come in, and the vendors would literally, in erstwhile times, I don't know how it is done now. I don't, again, sometimes I'm wrong. I have the right to be wrong. But traditionally, the vendors would approach the boats and purchase their fish. And when the consumers go to the vendors in the market, they knew that they were getting fresh fish. That aspect of the industry, that says that you have access to fresh fish, that has gone. And so vendors may now be forced to buy fish from the importers for resale. And you know what that will do to prices. And if prices are high, you know what that does to profits. And if prices are high, you know that you will get fewer people making the demand. And so the industry is close to destruction. But I was talking numbers. I will not presume now to give you the number of boat builders in this country. But the few that there are may be awaiting government's initiative to assist these people. They are people, they're human beings, they're flesh and blood and spirit. Except that they're unemployed. They're unemployed. And we started here today in good spirit. We started expressing commiseration and concern for men of indisposition and injury. Let us keep that good spirit and ask this government to assist not only those who go on to the high seas, but those who labor in the marketplaces, and to come to this industry with an offer that is acceptable. This government has not come to the industry with an offer that is acceptable. I'll give you some details as to what the government did in the aftermath of the disaster, of the hurricane. I heard all kinds of legal opinions about force majeure, and all kinds of legal opinions. I have mine. But an opinion is just that. It is settled only. Your smile is so sweetly, ma'am. Your smile is so sweet that it really is distracting me. Please do not smile like that, ma'am. You are the best looking in here, and it is difficult to address you.
Don't let the senior citizen fool you. Continue, sir.
Well, from this distance, you're certainly very good looking. And when you smile, it really disarms me. And I wish to address you. I wish to address you on serious matters. So
And I'm listening carefully.
you're listening.
Yes, please.
Yes, I'll try not to look in your direction when I address you. Now, I was talking about government's response to an industry, the destruction of which this government contributed. And I asked the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East to consider and to draw the inference that if the boats in Cognate did not suffer destruction and the boats in Bridgetown suffered destruction, it stands to reason that the boats in Cognate were properly and well prepared for the disaster that hit this country. And the government must still accept responsibility for what happened to those boats in the Bridgetown facility. They must accept responsibility for it. I am going to revisit this every time. I'm not backing down. That while the government, it was a difficult job to do. Can't this government do difficult jobs? When they were preparing for the T20 final, they knew that the hurricane was on its way. It may not have been possible to remove every boat from within that facility, but they ought to have started. The lands out by Baiko. The lands off Spring Garden. Please stop smiling, ma'am. You're disarming me. Baiko, Spring Garden, several open spaces across St. Michael, if they couldn't get them to Oystons up the highway. This government was derelict in its duty to the people of Barbados, to the boat owners of Barbados. They were derelict, and they don't want to hear that. They want the people in this country to believe that perfection resides in their bosoms. It is not a perfect government. It is a government that betrayed the cause and the interests of the boat owners when they huddled those boats into a restricted space. Whosoever will may come, bring your boat, come in. And like matchboxes and matchsticks in a confined space. Not only were the boats destroyed, but lives were destroyed. When this government, in a clumsy response to a hurricane while they were fetting at Kensington, allowed an industry to be destroyed. And they come to the people of this country. They have not deigned nor paused to apologize. They've only found time to be contemptuous and to say, take this $25,000 and see what you can do. Take this $25,000 and see what you can do. $25,000 could start a boat. But there still must be some credit due. They tried to do something. And ma'am, you probably don't know, and I will tell you what you don't know. In credit to the government, that they're giving some of the fishermen $2,200 a month. The Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central, He doesn't know. That's out of his sphere of lofty activity. That information does not reside within his sanitized environment. But in low places, the government has condescended, and they're giving some of the fishermen $2,200 a month. Not a bad little effort. It's about $500 a week. And the government's approach is that something is better than nothing. And if the honourable member for St. George South was not on the government side, he would shed a tear. He would shed a tear when he hears that big hardback men are to receive $2,200 per month for just a few months. I hope they're taking them into Christmas. I hope they're taking them into Christmas, but my information is that they're certainly not going into January 2025 if we get there. And if they get there, I asked this government to send the Big Works Minister to the industry. And the same way which the Big Works government can treat other industries with generous concessions, make a national concession and assist the boat people, the fishing industry. I am a committed regionalist. My philosophical position is that not one of these CARICOM nations will progress and thrive unless they choose to progress together. That's my philosophical position. And that has been a philosophical tradition, I believe, with the two major parties in Barbados. Nobody comes to a debate opposite the party of the present government and seeks to deride them on the question of nationalism. The first regional prime minister, we know who he was. And therefore the other side has a history of regionalist commitment. By the same token, they would not come to this side and deride this side on the question of regionalism, CARIFTA, which became CARICOM, which was associated with 4 West Indian Caribbean heroes. Right Excellent Arrow was one of them. So that all of us in this chamber, all of us, even those who may not know it, are joined to each other by that regionalist commitment. But when the fishermen of Barbados heard this week, or last week, or last weekend, I think this speech was made, may have been drowned out by karaoke, but something was said about a bank account for Cuba. You're asking the fishermen of Barbados to put money in the bank for Cuba. The quizzical looks would suggest that some are hearing it for the first time. That there's a bank account for Cuba. Where's the bank account for the fishing industry? Bank accounts are too good for them. They must have a voice. They must have a voice in this parliament. They must have a voice within domains of public debate, whose voice will be raised in defense of this industry, which has over the years employed thousands of people, which has fed thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. Which voice is raised for them? Which bank account is open for them? Where's the national contribution to this industry? And one of them said to me on Monday, I met with him, the industry is on life support. And when he used that word, it really struck me. The magnitude of this crisis really struck me. Everybody in Barbados knows that this industry is on life support. Everybody except 29 people. Everybody in Barbados knows that the fishing industry is in crisis, minus 29 people. And not one of them will raise their voice, small works or big works, to tell this government that the time has come to consider the rights, the political, economic, and moral rights of the people who reside in this industry. But I was saying what the government felt it should do. Well, $2,200 a month. You know, up to now they haven't told them for how many months, but one who told me that he believes they will be kind enough to take him to Christmas. And after Christmas and January comes, well, the government's position is that there's a Bajan expression, break for yourself. I don't want to identify the other industries that have never been told to break for yourself. I don't want to identify them. I am not here to bury the other industries. I'm here to praise the fishing industry for the good that they've done for this country. And everybody in Barbados knows that, except 29 people. You grew up in St. Thomas, ma'am. You grew up in St. Thomas.
The best parish.
The best parish, you claim.
Yes.
And as far as St. Thomas is from Bridgetown, you used to hear the lady outside, a wailing voice, fish. She walked from Bridgetown up by your house, man, and fed your village with sand on her feet. She means nothing to any of us. She means nothing to any. They went inland. And you, ma'am, grew up at a time when 10 flying fish, sometimes 15 flying fish would cost. They used to say a quart. And when the price was adjusted, they did not ask for more than a quart. They reduced the amount. Business creativity. They weren't fools, you know. You brought out the same quarter, but they adjusted not the price, but the quantity. So there was an adjustment in both. But you came with your quart, it's just that you got. And I remember well the days when it was 5 for a quart. It was almost poetic, 5 for a quart. A lot of them out there don't know these things. Ma'am, why don't you talk to them? Talk to them. And when you talk to them, Your Honor, they will understand why what this government is doing is even more egregious. Talk to them. Talk to them. Let them understand that it is not the government's sole duty to attend to the plight of the clamorous, but that nation building is heavily contributed towards by the humble, the meek, whom this government will not allow to inherit their just portion of this financial earth with reasonable contribution to them. That is what this government is doing, and they need to hear it. They need to hear it. Yes, clear your throat. You got to hear. They took up a man. Look, we're in the age of technology. You know, the cronyism practiced by this government is really disturbing. In the aftermath of the hurricane, rather than take some cash money and give to those who suffer, they bought plane tickets. I'm not going to accuse them of having flown first class from here to Canada. But this government took up, let them tell you the number. I know the number, but I am going to give them the chance to prove that they are capable of telling the truth. They sent a delegation in the aftermath of the destruction of an industry. They sent a delegation of people to Canada to look at some boats in an age of technology. Now, a few years ago when I met with the fisher folk and the boat owners of Oistins, not going to call the names of the persons, with the engineers, and we submitted a proposal to the government for hauling equipment to haul in the boats. We didn't have to go to Miami, where the equipment was located. We got photographs, we got videos. The gentleman, it was cheaper for the gentleman to pay for an airline ticket to come here and address us in the Oistins boat yard. I'm going to shout because I want them to hear me. I want this indifferent crowd to hear me. Technology allowed us to examine the equipment even while standing in the Oistins boat yard. Honourable member for St. Lucie, through you, ma'am. The government could have done the same thing in the aftermath of the destruction of an industry to which this government contributed by putting the people's boats in a confined area. But cronyism is one of this government's strategies in keeping its supporters happy. Not going to identify them. I'm not going to identify them. But they picked up a number of persons, put them in an aircraft, and sent them to Canada and say, we want y'all to go and look at some boats in Canada. Were they going to buy the boats for the fishermen? Everything is a transaction. Keep your supporters happy. Cronyism. Hope you're not uncomfortable, ma'am. I saw you. There's no distress.
No, sir, you have unlimited time.
Unlimited time. I see.
And I've come here to do the people's business.
Thank you very much. No, I saw hints of distress.
No, sir.
Oh, good.
I'm really very happy.
Beg your pardon, ma'am?
I'm very, very happy.
You're very happy. Good. But they sent their response to the crisis of an industry that was destroyed was to pick up a group of persons and send them, I'm not going to say by first class or economy, but to send them to Canada to look at boats. I asked this government, what is the report card? And I'm not asking the Honourable member for St. Michael West Central, he does not know. But which member of this government has been party to that decision, rooted in cronyism, to send a few political friends to Canada to literally look at boats. When they could have sent videos, when they could have had a report from the boat builder or the seller of the boats in Canada. And they're paying people big hardback money, $2,200 a month. How much the trip to Canada costs? How much did the trip to Canada cost? That could have contributed to the monies being given to the fishermen. I know what I'm talking about. I was told this directly by one of them. But every time there's an opportunity for the wastage of public funds, this government finds a reason to waste it. Every time there's an opportunity for the wastage of public funds, this government finds an opportunity to waste it. Must there not be a voice in this country in defense of those who suffer? There must be a voice. And if it falls to me, ma'am, if it falls to me, I choose to be that voice. And nobody can scare me. Nobody's going to scare me. I have a job to do, ma'am, and I intend to do it. I intend to be the voice, the sole voice in here if I have to be the sole voice. Unless one of them, or two or three, afflicted by an active conscience, decide to tell the truth, I would have to remain that sole voice in defense of the rights, interests, and entitlements of those who suffer. There's a lot of suffering in your country you didn't know. Nobody told you. Nobody told y'all. Well, go to Oysters and ask the fishermen that get in $2,200 a month, or the ones in Bridgetown who get in $2,200 a month. You couldn't take up one of them and send them to Canada. Who you sent? I got the list, you know. I have the list. But ma'am, I don't come here to embarrass anybody. If anybody is to be embarrassed, let it be the government. Let the embarrassment fall on a government that is derelict in its duty to protect the people of this country who have done them nothing except to live their lives honorably in an industry that is without glamour. But an industry, the destruction of which this government contributed heavily. And that is factual and legal. And I'm not leaving it. Let the High Court and the Court of Appeal and the Caribbean Court of Justice come and tell me that the government, in a legal sense, did not breach its public responsibility to that industry when it bundled those boats up in a confined space and caused the destruction not of wood and metal, but the destruction of lives. And nobody has raised a voice in government in their defense. We all love the Cubans too. And the idea of the bank account for the Cubans is a good idea. But an even better idea is a bank account for the fishing industry in this country. Who shall be their voice in government? Who will start the bank account for the boat owners and the vendors and the boat cleaners? Who is going to start a bank account for them? Not a voice is raised. Not a voice is raised in defense of the suffering in this country. They don't know that people suffering. They don't know what is the intent of suffering. Because somehow they delude themselves that they're so well loved and so popular. that everything they say or do is acceptable. And I heard something over the weekend that really scared me. Because when you have a government saying that, in spite of the record levels of unemployment, that they will remain in the affections of this population, that is a level of self-delusion that is really destructive, not only of the government itself, and that is not my concern, but that is a level of self-delusion that is destructive of a country. When a government will boast to these citizens that in spite of record levels of unemployment, they will remain within the people's affections. Because unemployment, the plight of the suffering, in their view, means nothing even to those who suffer. They believe that the people's priority is a perception of their own popularity. And whether that popularity is manifested through karaoke or dancing. It's a term that the young people use, and when you and I hear it, ma'am, you know, our generation, we laugh, doing the dog. I am always amused when I hear it, that the government's view is that they can do the dog, and people will still love them. Well, continue along the path of self-delusion. Continue to believe that your refusal and failure and neglect to support an industry which is crying for help will keep you in the people's affections. Continue to delude yourselves. But my message will end with a plea to this government. I am going to now reach in to a part of them called their conscience. Because I don't believe that any member of this government is without a conscience. And I'm going to reach in, perhaps with some success, perhaps with none. Their own conscience will decide. But I want this government having the power to assist an industry, to make serious efforts to assist an industry, make that pledge and that commitment. And when you drop the first dollar in the bank account for Cuba, drop in 10 for the fishing industry. Where are the consciences? Where's the commitment? Where's the loyalty to country? Where's the love for the poor of which you speak seasonally? At elections, everybody loves the poor people. Everybody loves the poor people. Oh, the poor people. They're so sweet. And when they line up at the election booth, oh, they look so lovely. Well, the election booth has been dismantled until that time comes. They are at the booth begging this government for assistance. Will you turn your backs on them, government? Will you reject them, government? Will you treat them as if they're not worthy of consideration? Do you sit in a government from week to week and see and know and understand the suffering of people and have a conscience within you, within your mind, body, and soul? Find it. Find it today. and tell Big Works that even small people are entitled to some consideration. Tell Big Works that. So I appreciate the honourable member for St. Michael West Central. He's come here today with a compendium of legislation which will do little or no disturbance to the lives of ordinary people, merchant shipping and big shipping, and visits to the harbor. Harbor is the most beautiful part of Barbados. Blue waters, big shops, beautiful tourists and tourist guides and taxis and, beg your pardon, ma'am? You know, you're the best among them.
I don't wear blue.
Or you don't wear blue?
No, please.
Well,
Continue, sir.
I don't know what will be your swan song.
Your batting songs, but your batting song.
I don't know what will be your swan song.
I wear red.
You wear red.
Red.
With the benches at Foundation, even the benches up there red. Since you introduced
sir.
it, ma'am, you know they paint the benches red
Lord
too.
have mercy.
We thought it was only the floor. At Foundation, the children up there dazzled, bedazzled by a red floor. Propaganda. But ma'am, you wish me to stay on the topic, and you brought me on to the color of red. I saw a picture this morning. You know, these people went up to sit for Foundation and paint the floor, the benches, right? The little children up there at lunchtime, sitting down on red benches. Well, you don't get the fishermen some red benches too? Or some red dollar bills. You know, the dollar bills used to be red, ma'am. In your time or mine. But you give the children up there some red benches. I saw a red tent yesterday. They moved it this morning because I drove by. Red floor, red bench. The colors of hypnosis. You put a man in a red room, he goes mad. I have no doubt that the
You seem to be missing red.
You heard the honourable member for St. Michael's South.
No, I didn't hear. I don't hear your side.
But if you put a man in a red room, I saw pictures of it. I could not believe it. My parliamentary colleagues were up there dancing. Just up from Oystons where the people are suffering. They're up there in a red room dancing, bedazzle and hypnotize. The people in Barbados started this right, you know. The people in Barbados are tired of the raid. They paint Oystons red as well. Ma'am, have you ever seen a red fishing boat? You ever saw a red cruise liner? You ever saw a red merchant ship? The answer is no. You paint your marine craft in colors that are compatible with the environment. Blue as well, and white, and aquamarine. Not yellow though, because we understand that it is not our role and purpose in life to purchase the minds of the people with slogans and symbols. Touch people's hearts. Render yourselves genuinely interested in livelihoods and in people and in people's lives. That is how this government needs to render itself. And I repeat, I appreciate the 2-hour speech made by my parliamentary colleague. In his dulcet tones, to an audience of 2 actively listening. That's you and me. Now they're trying to make notes, trying to hustle together a speech, trying to hustle together a speech, trying to hustle together a speech or instruction. Ma'am, this government is failing the people of this country. This government has failed the fishing industry of this country. This government has failed the children of the fisher folk of this country. This government has no plan for the future of an industry. In the middle of October, the members of that industry do not know where they will be in the middle of October in 2025 nor 26, because this government has not presented them with any plan, any viable plan, any workable plan. It is as if the government wishes that they would disappear. They are not going to disappear. They will form a queue. And just as they form a queue to collect the $2,200 when the month comes, a time will come when they will reconstitute that queue. Beware, my friends. Beware. Beware. What we come here to do is serious business. This is the people's business. And it ceases to be the people's business unless we take it seriously and unless we take the people seriously. And y'all believe that the fisher folk like y'all? There may well be some personal affections, but objectively they feel betrayed. This government has betrayed the fishing industry. This government has betrayed the people who work in that industry. There are people up there, 74 years. 74 years. You know how it is to do the same job for 74 years? A woman who is close to, a lady who is close to 90. She has been doing the same work for 74 years. It means nothing to this government. Must she fall by the wayside? Must she fall by the economic wayside? Must she be retired by this government? Although she wants to work at the age of close to 90, her happiness and her survival means nothing to this government. When you're all in first class on British Airways, y'all don't feel sorry for anybody. They don't feel sorry for anybody. When they sent the crowd up to Canada to look at the boats, they didn't feel sorry for the people, the fisher folk, when those checks were being written. When they were in those comfy hotels in Canada, this government didn't feel sorry for anybody. That is how you have to address this government now. That is how this government must be addressed, as an uncaring and indifferent government. Uncaring and indifferent. But you're real popular, you know. And I'm going to leave you all with that self-belief that your appeal to the people of this country is one in which they hold you in dearest affection. You are so loved. They cherish you. You have rejected them, but still they cherish you. Their record levels of unemployment in this country added to by those who have lost jobs in the fishing industry, but they love you. And the head of you said that this weekend, that in spite of record levels of unemployment, you are loved. And if she believes that, the intelligent and the conscientious among you will disjoin yourself from that self-delusion that you are living high on the hog. And the people in this country must stand and watch you in your lofty places and show nothing but love for you, because you're entitled to that. And the fisher folk in this country mean nothing, absolutely nothing, to this government. Ma'am, am I repeating myself? I'm not. I'm not. Because I don't want to leave here today and leave a government behind that continues to delude itself, because unless I can persuade them away from self-delusion, they will continue to show the people, the suffering people of this country, the indifference that they're showing them. And that is why I must bring these harsh truths to this government. And to beg, I'm going to beg them now, to beg them to pay some attention to the lowest and unglamorized levels of the maritime industry. This is a debate on maritime affairs. And the message I leave with this government is that the poor little fisherman is as much a part of the maritime industry as the captain of a cruise liner. And the minute you cease to believe that is the moment that you betray the people who have placed you where you are. Where is your conscience? Those of you present and absent, where is your conscience? Dead? Like the industry? Dead like the industry? Please, government, please, in the short time that the industry may have left, and in the short time that you may have left, do something good. Do something good for the industry. Do something good for the people of Barbados. I know, ma'am, that you, and this is no disclosure about which one needs to be overly discreet. What will be your swan song? What will be your swan song, ma'am? I know St. Thomas has no coastline, but there are coastlines of suffering even through the rural central parishes of Barbados. And I demonstrated to you, ma'am, that even your parish is connected to the industry. That the fisher women, the fisher folk used to walk from Bridgetown up to St. Thomas. So you're not insulated against the problem, ma'am. Your constituency historically, traditionally, and culturally has not been insulated against the industry that your government is killing. And I'm going to close and summarize that the wrong was done to the industry when this government failed to prepare, I beg your pardon, I will repeat, that the wrong done by this government to the fishing industry was began when the government failed to prepare for a hurricane and failed to find succor, safe harbor for those boats. And in the aftermath, rather than come to the industry with contrition, this government has come to the industry with contempt. $25,000. Go and find a boat, and we are going to give you either $25,000 or 25% of the cost of the boat. The Honourable member, in his honesty, St. Michael's South. I was keeping it conservative. I said 475,000. He breaks ranks with his colleagues and tells me, no, it's more than that. I'm not going to embarrass him by asking him to disclose the figure. But if he takes it to 550,000, let us compromise at $500,000. This government is asking a fisherman to raise $100,000 in cash. is what this government is saying. Go away and find $100,000 and come back to me. The same government that is opening bank accounts for Cuba. The same government that is opening bank accounts for Cuba is telling the fishermen of this country, the boat owners of this country, that if your boat costs $500,000, start it. Start it. I am going to give, if you're broke, I'm going to give you $100,000. And the $100,000 can't start and complete a boat. It cannot. It cannot. Why has this government abandoned those maritime people? They're maritime too, you know. Honourable member for St. Michael West Central, they're maritime too. Maybe none of your business. You do well in lofty places, sanitized and deodorized places. Quietly, you do very well. You do your job with a certain efficiency and quiet. You're never party to the controversy. If you were absent, if the honourable member for St. Michael West Central were absent this morning because of certain recent events, I would have been surprised. He's not given to that. He is a gentleman. If I had heard that he was in violence over the weekend, I would have been surprised. But with his outstanding team of high maritime matters, he did well today. He embraced international convention. These fishermen are not party to any international convention. Their only convention is the convention of the poor and the suffering. When will this government embrace that convention? Seriously, when will this government embrace that convention of suffering that afflicts the lives of an industry? Indifference, neglect, and acceptance. You know, their position is, oh, the poor will always be among us. Well, the poor will always be among y'all. I want to see the bank account for Cuba. I want to see the bank account for Cuba, Your Honor. The industry is suffering. It is almost dead. This government has made no serious effort to address it. I said earlier, and I'm going to repeat, I don't repeat to be in breach of the standing orders. I repeat so that the consciences in front of me will be pricked. And that while they send the honourable member for St. Michael West Central in here to speak in dulcet tones and to speak beautifully of a highly glamorized industry, find one of them, find one among them who has a conscience, which is not to say that that honourable member doesn't have a conscience. He has a commitment to his ministry. And this is none of his business. Clearly it is not. But which among this vast government, 20, I've lost count. To be honest with you, sometimes I don't know who is minister of what. Sometimes I don't know. You know, the people in Barbados don't know who is the minister of what, except perhaps the member for St. Philip South, who ought to have had a responsibility in this as agriculture minister. What was his role? What was his role when those boats were being destroyed? Next to him, the green economy man, minister, I beg your pardon, sir. Was there a role for him? And you know, I can walk around, I can trace my eyes across this cabinet government and find about 4 or 5 ministers who legitimately ought to have touched and concerned themselves with the suffering of those fisher folk, but who were all at the T20 final. Cricket, lovely cricket. At Kensington where they saw it. And they couldn't find 2 pals among them. rescue a fishing industry. I close on that appeal to this government. I'm obliged to you, ma'am.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central.
Madam Deputy Chair, I rise firstly to support. I rise firstly to support the cellulose legislation brought by my colleague from St. Michael West Central. But just to divert, because the honourable member of the opposition asked a series of questions and made a number of comments, and I think that it is only fair that I, as minister responsible for the blue economy, the fishing industry, respond. And just to say, Madam Deputy Chair, on that fateful day of the 1st of July, fateful day, we were exposed to an act of Mother Nature that none of us would have ever imagined. Where our breakwater system that would have served this country for over 35 years was compromised with waves some fisher folk believe to be over 30 feet with abnormal energy thrust, destroying the breakwater as we know it and compromising the boats, not only in the water, but some on the dry dock as well. Some on the dry dock that persons perceive would be safe there were also damaged because of the abnormal activities of an abnormal system. And what we need to say, Madam Deputy Chair, is that we have to thank God for small mercies. And I say so with all the sinew in my being. We have to thank God for small mercies. Because if we reflect on what happened to countries that were impacted by the hurricane, it went into Hurricane 5 system. And you recognize what happened in those other countries. The Windward Islands, Trinidad, Venezuela. We had devastation beyond our imagination. So it was not only Barbados which felt the full effects of this abnormal thrust and hurricane, but as I said, it was countries across the world whose economies, like our fishing sector, were destroyed. That is the reality of it. In our fishing industry, we lost 240 boats total, which were damaged or destroyed. I want to say today that 149 of those boats were damaged, 91 totally destroyed based on the engineers' reports. Today I want to report to the country because from the time that the incident took place, I was made aware that there was an adverse impact on the fishing industry in our Bridgetown harbor. I made it my business, when given the all clear around 1:32 to be on the road to be present with the fisher folk so we can start the action plan. The Prime Minister in boots also turned up to have the conversation right there and then with the fisher folk about the recovery plan. Minister, my colleague from Christchurch East, was there, and the Member of Parliament for St. Michael Southeast, all there to support and ensure that the fisher folk were looked after. And this is what we have done since that fateful day. This is what this government has done. I just said 149 boats were damaged. I want to report today, because the first thing the Prime Minister said is that she is going to set up a benevolent fund for the fisher folk, where we will be able to meet their immediate needs. Because we believe as a government, as a caring government, that their basic needs must be looked after. We understand full well that the fisher folk have family like everybody else. They are the bedrock for a lot of society and a lot of homes and families in this country that we live in. They're responsible. They provide the basic needs for their family. We understand that. And so a benevolent fund was set up by the Prime Minister immediately, because she met with the fisher folk, along with myself and the ministers I just alluded to, on site and subsequently. And I want to say that so far, that benevolent fund has realized over $2 million. I want to repeat, $2 million to support the fishing industry. $2 million. That's what we have done so far. I want to say, as I said earlier, 149 boats were damaged. The first thing we decided as a government, knowing full well that like other fishing industries across the world, Barbados fishing industry suffers from the same IUU. Illegal, unregulated, undocumented fishing sector. Unreported. You'll probably say UUU. Unreported fishing sector. Which means a lot of the fisher folk are not formally associated with the sector in the way that we would like them to be. It's a fact across the world, and we deal with it at all the international conventions. It is a fact. And so, it was, I may say, a tedious exercise to get all that information and get them into the systems so that we can start the disbursements immediately. It was. And we recognize, of course, that the fisher folk, majority, over 90% of them, had no insurance. So we had to implement what I call the 3 R's of good politics. We had to rescue the industry. We had to restore it, because that was the effort that was needed right then. And we are now in the process of rebuild. But let me further explain. Out of the 149 boats damaged, because as the Prime Minister announced to the country, and I'm sure that all the fisher folk heard, because a lot of them, majority of them were at the meetings that we held. And this minister have had a number of meetings only a couple of weeks ago with the fisher folk. And I met them at the boat yards that they are repairing their boats. That's why you can speak about the repairs of the boats, because I visited them on more than one occasion. And when I couldn't meet all of them in their space physically, there were virtual meetings as well, where we discussed at length and agreed on the way forward for the fishing industry. And with all those meetings I had with the fisher folk, I must tell you, I have only heard 2 persons so far. 2. I've only heard. I can only speak of what I've heard. Who is lamenting the fact that the government should give them 100% financial assistance. For the major part, the fisher folk not only understands, but agree with the 25% as announced by the Prime Minister as a grant for both repairs and the advancement of new boats. With a 30-year revolving loan scheme at 4% at the lowest interest rate. That is what was the agreed position. And I want to say that so far, out of the 149 boats that were damaged, albeit that we had a tedious, maybe onerous at times, exercise in getting those persons in terms of the TAMIS information, getting them banking information. Majority of them have banking information. Little or, I can say very few of the fisher folk had an NIS number. They were not part of the formal setup. And so, we work, and I must thank those persons in my fishery division, led by, of course, the Chief Fisheries Officer, who worked relentlessly to ensure we got that information for the fisher folk, so that today I can report to the country that out of 149 boats damaged, 78 persons so far, 78 persons so far has gotten their first 25% grant so they can repair their boats. I want to report today, out of 149, I will repeat, damaged vessels, 78 persons have received the 25% grant given by government for the repairs based on the engineer's assessment. But we went a little further because we understood and we understand the industry. And we understand quite clearly that the fisher folk probably had money to pay for those assessments, those engineers' assessments. There are about 6 marine engineers in Barbados. And what we say to the fisher folk, contact those engineers. The numbers were provided. Contact those engineers. And what this government will do is that we will pay the marine engineers for assessing the boats and sending in those reports so we can give you the 25% up front. And that is what has happened so far. I must say that on a daily basis, persons are sending in those repair estimates by the marine engineers so that the accounts department can process them. That is what has happened so far. And we have cited the fisher folk in meetings, because we have had a number of meetings. And all the fisher folk, all of them, with the exception of probably 2 or 3, understands fully well that the other 75% will be accommodated, and we have had discussions with the enterprise, both the enterprise growth fund and fund access, so we can incorporate them into the system and get these boats back on the water. If any person in Barbados happen to pass by the port, by the Coast Guard, or behind the coastal managed area, you will see fisher folk working. And if you happen to do like this, Minister, and go and engage them, they will tell you how happy they are to receive that first set of grant money on behalf of the government of Barbados. But what else have we done? We have said that we must provide, and this is the Prime Minister, and she said it. She only said it, but she ensured that the provisions were there so it can happen as well. We have said that there must be a business interruption benefit, similar to what happened during COVID. Now this is emergency, and this is not for political theatrics, of course. This is serious business, the business of people's lives and their livelihoods. We know that families were affected in the being severe. We know very well that there must be a basic needs approach to the way how we deal with it. And what we decided to do as a responsible carrying government. And this was the decision of cabinet. Not only the member part of St. Michael Northeast, as we know it. This was the unequivocal decision of cabinet that we will pay for all boat owners for the first 3 months initially, with the likelihood of extension. All boat owners will receive $2,500 over the first 3 months initially, with the possibility of extending if needed. $2,500, all boat owners. And all crew members, $1,500, and captains, $1,500. That was the decision of cabinet in order to be able to help persons during this difficult time. I want to say that there were 469 persons who qualified under this business interruption benefit scheme. 469. I repeat, 469. I want to say, as I speak, out of those 469 that were supposed to receive benefits, all 469 persons got their first tranche so far. All 469 from a carrying government. All. I want to also say that out of that 469, for their second tranche, 150 persons have been paid thus far. And these payments are given on a daily basis. So I expect between this week, sometime next week, that the other tranche will be delivered to those fisher folk, those boat owners, those captains, and those crew who were not either not employed or engaged in other activities where they would consider employed persons. That is what we have done so far as a government. Recognizing, of course, the difficulties of being able to get that information because the system was not formalized, as I said, and it's not idiosyncratic to Barbados because this is a problem we are facing with globally in terms of the IUU situation. That is what we have done so far. And I want to say, I want to thank you, have the opportunity right now to thank those persons who would have given to this benevolent fund because, as I said, we have to thank those persons in the same way that we are saying to Cuba, we are going to help you as a good brother. Reciprocity sometimes works both ways. And I want to thank now CAF for lending assistance to this benevolent fund. The government of Bahamas, Dominica, and there is an individual who would have donated some funds, and it's not for me to be able to advertise in this August chamber. But this is the type of benevolence and the type of country that we intend to build on in terms of relationships. We must be able to help each other, not only as a country, because my appeal was to Barbadians as well, to assist those same fisher folk, because I'm sure that a lot of us can go in the fish market at times. And I know that a lot of us venture in oysters, that beautiful redefined market, and are able to get an extra fish or two to help feed your family. And I say that we must be able to help lift up each other in the face of these adversities. Yeah, we must be able to lift up each other. And I'm happy that we were given the support so that the benevolent fund will be able to help those fisher folk to support themselves and their families. We also said that it is not for our government to have a tailor-like approach to the boats, whether it is the repairs or the buying of new boats. That decision must be the sole decision of the fisher folk, who sometimes were involved in the industry for the better part of 50, 60 years. Even before some of us were in our nascent existence. And we said, as a responsible government, that we will allow the fisher folk to go on an exploratory trip to see for themselves, because a lot of the complaints were that when they were online and viewing these boats, they were not satisfied in terms of the location, the size. There were a lot of things that they wanted to see. They're asked to go and to see and be part of the decision making. And it was decided because of the marine expertise in Canada and the companies that we recognize that were similar in terms of the build out of the boats and the hulls. Because a lot of persons see our fishing vessels, maybe dock, whether on land or at sea, and think that there are just boats that you can go on the internet and order, and that what works in China can work in Barbados, and what works in Japan can work in Barbados, and what works in another country can work in Barbados. But our fishing industry is so unique to us that the fisher folk said in one voice, look, we need, because this is what we fish for. We do long line fishing for tuna, swordfish, and other related families. This is what this industry requires, and we need to go and see for ourselves. And this government made the decision to allow and accommodate those fishermen. I want to give the country, the team that went to Canada to see for the boats for themselves so they could make informed decisions and return to their respective associations. So the fishermen, the Banofo, I want to tell you who was on that trip. You have the PS of the ministry, of course, as the chief financial officer. We had a government procurement officer. We had a senior vessel inspector who inspects the vessel. We had 4 fisher folk. How many? 4 fisher folk, including the head of the government fisheries advisory committee and a local boat builder as part of the delegation to ensure that not only the boats are fit for purpose, but we had the government procurement officer, so that the procurement rules and the procurement engagement will be in line with what occurs in this government. I don't know what occurred prior to 2018, but I know this is what we did. I want to call out the delegation. The PS of the ministry, the chief fisheries officer of the ministry, the senior vessel inspector who inspects the vessels before they go in the ocean, whether new, repaired, or old, on a yearly basis. 4 fisher folk. Now, I don't see where is that 4 fisher folk. The fisher folk in the community that is part of the social build-up of this community. This star has worked hard to build Barbados, build families in Barbados. Fisher folk who are responsible for feeding this country, who are responsible for the 6 million or so that the central bank report that comes in through the industry. Ordinary people, village people, like myself, a small minister, a village person. I can't fathom why there could not be taken on a trip to see those boats that will ensure the basic survival of their livelihood. I can't see it. I really can't see. I can't fathom. Fisher folk from Oystins, fisher folk from Bridgetown, fisher folk from Cognate, Bay, Paynes Bay, fisher folk all over Barbados, ordinary people like those who were to feed the Member of Parliament for St. James Central and allow you to be here today with full sinew, and the Member of Parliament for St. Lucie, who was able to have that delicacy on his table. And I'm sure the Member of Parliament for Christchurch South, when he has the time and he visits Oystins, he may get a fish or two too. So it has been able to feed each one of us in here. It has been able to sustain our lives. It has been part of the social build-up. And I am making no apology to Barbadians, sorry. I am not making an apology for Barbadians to send in fishermen to Canada, 4 fishermen to Canada, to be able to see boats and help build back this industry. I am making no apology today to anybody. I am proud to say that the fisher folk, and I learned today, because it was told that they probably had good amenities, I will hope that we as the government, I know that any hotel they go in will be a hotel, will be a pristine place that is fit for fishermen, that is fit for lawyers, that is equally fit for parliamentarians, that is equally fit, Madam Deputy Speaker, for yourself to be able to go and use the fish. You may order fish up there too. I am glad, I am proud that the fisher folk went up there, and not only went up there, but they reported from going up there that we can get boats built in Canada, especially those larger boats over 45 feet. And we have started to have those engagements where the companies over there can build those molds for us in Barbados to be able to build back our fisher industry, which is unique because the type of boats that we have, interestingly, is not something that you can go any place and just buy off the internet, as was suggested, or you can look at the internet, as maybe suggested earlier. These boats are, even the way how the ice boxes are put in these boats are unique to Barbados. Even that, how we put the fishing lines and stuff, every equipment that is used is unique to Barbados. And so that is why this fact-finding mission was so critical. And that's why this fact-finding mission was made up of the persons who not only operate in the industry, who not only live in the industry and are part of the tangible build-up of the industry, but those who will be affected if we get it wrong.
Sound like a fisheries minister, sir.
No, if we get it wrong, and if we are not able to have the ear of the fisher folk, which I often have on meetings with them, whether virtually or in person, because I have been in the hot boiling sun, and I make no apology by saying that I enjoy the interaction with our fisher folk. They will tell you that I'm often at, whether it is the market in Bridgetown or at the boat yards where they are repairing their boats. And I happen to spend a long time. I happen to spend a long time because I understand the importance of having this industry. This And I know that everybody in this chamber understands the importance of having this industry back up and running. I know we do. But it is a work in progress. And I want to say that we have decided, because the build out of the industry requires us to start having a serious conversation about the future of those boat builders. And we said that when these hulls come in, those bigger hulls, because we understand quite well that the local boat building industry can supply us with hulls and boats under the 45 feet. We understand that. And I want to say, as I speak, there is a boat, a new boat, being built by one of our local companies as I speak. I also want to report to the country that so far, with the efforts, I didn't want to thank the fisher folk for staying the course. I want to thank the fishermen and the fisherwomen of this country, fisher folk, for staying the course. Because so far, with our collective effort, because it's about partnerships. It is about partnerships. And you can't have just transition and partnerships unless you involve women as well. The Sustainable Development Goal 12 speak about responsible production and consumption. And just and in order to just transition, where you will have that, in order to just transition and to move from a leaner to a more circular type economy, women must be at the forefront. And that is why I'm thankful that the Member of Parliament for St. Michael South started the fish silage and fish offal project, where we are taking now with the women folk in Bridgetown. They're taking the offal and the silage from the fish and now in a circular way using it in the agriculture belt by pelletizing it for the rabbits and what's not. That is part of the circular build out and the future of the industry that we are going to deal with. We've also said that because the boat building industry is one of the industries that require those technical expertise and that traditional knowledge, that we will have a partnership. We have already had the conversation with the principals at Salmon Jackman Institute, where we are going to be working with those young people, those young carpenters and persons involved in that industry, to be able to come and work with our fisher folk to get that expertise so that we can have persons to build an industry. The idea is that when we build out, when we have all these molds, some 45, less than 45, some over 45 feet. When we have these molds in Barbados, and we have persons trained, because it's not only that the principals, and we went to visit the principals of those companies, persons came to Barbados to be able to look to see the damaged boats too. So they will have ideas about what is required in our industry along with our fisher folk. And there's a plan in place to provide that type of level of training. And I'm saying when that training is provided for those fisher folk, because we're moving a lot from the wooden boats to the fiberglass boats and using green technologies in terms of the fishing equipment and that type of stuff. So when the training starts, we are saying that the training will involve those young people from the Salmon Jackman Prescott Institute, so we'll have a fisher industry that can survive the test of times. That is what we are saying. And not only that, with the hills here in Barbados, with the hills here, and with the moors here in Barbados, we can have a hub to be able to supply fishing vessels, not only locally, not only regionally, but internationally as well. So Barbados can become a hub.
I remember you have 5 minutes.
Thank
please.
you. Barbados can become a hub, a leading hub in the supply of fishing vessels across the region and the rest of the world. That is the future of the industry that we are talking about. I want to say that we have had the discussion with the fisher folk. We have involved the fisher folk in every single aspect of the discussion. They are well aware because this minister speaks to them on a regular basis of what is happening in the fishing industry. I want to say that the 25% for the new boat is something that we have committed to those fisher folk, where the mows and the hulls will be done locally and with the intention to build back the industry in the not too distant future. I just want to say, in terms of the breakwater, that we have already passed the procurement stage, where a contract was, as I speak, was awarded for persons to use different resilient material, armor stones, to build out the breakwater, because the reality is that we had the breakwater there that lasted 35 years. 35 years. It's like sometimes you will have a hurricane passing, it will miss a house, it will probably miss the house for 35 years, and all of a sudden, that one house is destroyed and none other. It's unpredictable. This is Mother Nature. And whoever believed that climate change was unreal, that is a fragment of imagination. That is something that you watch on the Scooby-Doo show. What happened with Beryl can tell each and every one of us that it is real. It is real. It must be at the forefront of the conversation. That is why our Prime Minister, in her wisdom, has led the charge on the front foot to get persons minded about climate change, minded about the existential threats, minded about the fact that if you don't start doing the right things in terms of building our resilience, that we will be like, in terms of the old Barbadian colloquium, we will be sitting ducks in a small country just exposed. And that is why we are saying that with the experts, the marine experts, we have invested now in a new breakwater system that will be built out over the next couple of months, using stronger, more resilient material so we can mitigate the vagaries of the different hurricanes. And I want to say to Barbadians to continue to pray, because as much as we were lucky that we didn't have the devastation on land, because based on what happened in St. Vincent and those and the Grenadines and those Windward Islands, God forbid what will happen on land. And I know that, like other persons in here, I live in probably a little more elevated area than most people. And I won't want to face, and I have to thank God that we were not faced with the same destruction as those countries, because we will not be only talking about the fishing recovery, we may be talking about the recovery from persons who will have been devastated in terms of their homes like other countries. I want to say to Barbadians that I thank God for small mercies. I am thankful that no one lost their lives, because we'll be having a different conversation here. We will do everything in our power as a government. I just explained to the country what we have done so far in terms of the repairs. I want to say to the fisher folk that the $2,500 for the boat owners will continue, so we can support their immediate needs the first 3 months initially, and then the discussion will happen after. For the captains, we are saying $1,500 a month, and the crew members, the $1,500 a month, because we understand the importance of being able to satisfy their basic needs and put food on the table. This is a government that has the pulse of the people at heart. We understand the importance of having an action plan to speak to the needs, the basic needs of our people, and we are not going to let the fisher folk or any other sector suffer under our watch. We have made an unswerving commitment to the fisher folk. I am leading the charge as the minister responsible, and I want to give not only the fisher folk the calm assurance, but all of Barbados, that the fishing industry will be built forward better under my watch and under this government's watch, and I will ensure that this boat that was rudderless before 2018, that this boat with a captain who is compassionate, caring, and careful will navigate the shoddy waters, even if it is the waters of Hurricane Beryl. Ladies and gentlemen, I am obliged.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 20 minutes past 3.
Honourable members. Honourable members, the question is that the suspension will be, of this Honourable Chamber, will be held until 20 minutes after 3 this afternoon. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber is suspended until 3:20 this afternoon.